Yeah.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Do it. Big question. Hi, I'm Elle Vanderdeyl. I played Emery Dupont in this Dance Ribbons. I'm actually newish to LARP. Like, I started with Dance Ribbons too, but it's something I've always wanted to explore. And I got the chance when I moved to Melbourne. And I guess it's what it means to me is like collaborative storytelling and, getting to really immerse myself in like these worlds with other people and get to play with other people in these, cool environments, So that's, I guess what it means to me. Yeah.
Yay! Oh my god. Okay. Does that mean I have to do all of that intro again? Okay, let's introduce our panelists and then I'll do my intro again. Mish, who are you? What does LARP mean to you and what was your experience of this LARP?
Yeah, so I'm Mish, and what LARP means to me is getting to go back to the days where I was like addicted to playing pretend with my cousins and stuff, and like living and just imagining all the time, probably the ADHD as well, and just getting to revisit that and having a creative outlet at the same time, and having a wonderful community as well.
Cute.
And yeah, it's like taken over my life. It's, a bit crazy, if anything. And my experience was like overwhelmingly positive. Like, I think it completely changed like how I go about LARP and how I look at LARPs and what I want in LARPs as well, which I think is
That's
a big change for me.
That's a thing that we're going to talk more about. Will, who are you? The rest of the questions.
Big philosophical question there. Hi, I'm Will. I've been LARPing in Victoria for about 10 years now. Started out with small freeform style LARPs at Monash Uni, and then my first big weekender was at After the Fall. I LARP because the insincere answer is because I like to put on funny hats and do funny voices. The actual answer is because I like being able to play a different character, immerse myself fully into a role, and really just lean into that. And yeah, Dance Ribbons was an incredible experience and has definitely left me with wanting to make my own LARPs and to give me lessons to figure out how to do that.
That's awesome. That thing about wanting to make your own LARPs is something that fades very well into the Immersive Arts Melbourne discussion. So Immersive Arts Melbourne is a group of LARP rights and event managers who want to help make more LARPs happen, who love the LARP medium as an art form. We've made a bunch of games. We want to see more games. We want to play more games. We've got a series of events coming in 2026 called Pilot Season, which we will be talking about more soon. We have our official launch event coming, and there is a link in the chat to our... Taryn's doing weird things at me, and it's very urgent. What's wrong?
You missed one.
Okay. And there is a launch event. There is an email list in the intro, in the chat for people who would like to hear more. And let's go to Elle. Who are you? No, we did Elle. We did Elle at the start. Let's do Elle again now that we've got sound working.
Okay.
Who are you?
So
what does that mean to you?
I'm Elle Vanderdeyl. I'm fairly new to the scene, but getting to just get to play pretend with a bunch of other people and have fun with that and create like stories and get to play through these big ideas in this sort of like safe environment is like just amazing. you know, going into like game 2, I was like, I want to like speedrun ex-Catholicism. I don't know. I want to like have a character who just like completely their whole worldview shatters. And I'm like, that's just like an amazing thing to get to like play with and like play in that space with other people. And in terms of this LARP, I mean, so like I said, Dance Ribbons 2 was my first LARP, which obviously sets the bar incredibly high. So obviously I don't expect every LARP to be that. But, you know, I think the way that, you know, the team created this environment for everyone to feel safe to play in and create that sense of community was incredible. And that's something like, you know, going forward, I want to be able to, you know, help create that space for other people as well. You know, because they did such a good job. And I'm like, I would love to be able to like facilitate play the way that they did. So yeah, that's what I'm taking forward from that.
I love that. So last time we did this, no, let's do this. The Dance of Ribbons, for anyone who is watching this who didn't play that game or who doesn't know about that game, was a series of 3 weekend events run over 3 years, 1 a year, and 2 one sort of evening games. They are weekend LARPs. They go for 4 days. Very much folk horror about a group of people in a relatively low fantasy world who come to do a festival. The players are split into 6 factions, and 3 of those factions are sort of clansfolk, who are the cool ones and the best ones, and the other 3 factions are the wanky folk. No, are the Garmontians, the fancy people. They are much more sort of modern tech Renaissance than the clansfolk, who are a bit more medieval. And the vast majority of my game, all of the games, was spent hanging out with other clansfolk. And we realized, just as we were about to press go on our Dance of Ribbons postmortem, that everyone who was in it and everyone who we'd invited were clanfolk. And we're like, that's probably not fair. And so I thought that I would just talk for 3 hours myself about the experience of being Garmontian at the Dance of Ribbons. Seriously though, the factions and their individual natures do change the game experience, and I think that the game that you guys got was in some ways the same game that I played, and in as much as LARPs are always very individual experiences, in some cases, like the game that you guys played was really, really different to the game that I played. And I would like to hear what you guys think about the difference between the clan game and the Garmontian game, and what we can talk about that as a design decision. Feel free to jump in whenever anyone else is not talking. Go, Elle's going to start and then we'll
unmute myself. Yeah, it was actually really interesting, you know, kind of meeting up with like Vicarian players after like a day, or like, you know, you kind of come across each other like, you know, after meal times and stuff, and just the difference of experience. So, you know, in Garmon, I feel like we had a very political game, very like, you know, playing like sort of power like kind of games, you know, trying to like sneak around each other and, you know, all this kind of stuff. So it's very like political intrigue kind of stuff. And then you talk to someone from like Vicaria and they're like, yeah, no, we like did some like fun rituals, and you know, we you know, chatted around like the circle, and you know, it was just like a very different game. Like we were talking about like closing the gate, and on the sort of Garmont side where we're like, okay, we're gonna like deal with all this Inquisition stuff and like what all that means. And then the biggest concern over in Vicaria, like one of the jokes, one of the things I heard was like, oh, like if we close the gate though, like what does that mean for the Wodens? Are they still going to be our friends? And that was like a big like conversation that was like so different to what was happening over in like Garmont. And obviously being like as well from Straussland, which was just the faction of chaos. So there was always just some, political craziness going on. And then the few times that I got to kind of spend some time more on the Vicarian side, and obviously everyone's kind of experience is like individual, but my experience when I like spent time in the Vicarian side of things was very sort of just reflective. I got to do like the whole like memories thing with math, and when I was in Hathwold, like for a bit hiding from the Inquisition, and that was again, it was like just a lot more reflective and time just sort of in these like individual sort of like one-on-one conversations. So it was a very different sort of game, I feel.
Yeah, the pitch for Dance of Ribbons was it's Midsummer meets Game of Thrones, and Vicaria was the Midsummer part of it, and Game of Thrones was the Garmont side of it. There was a lot of politicking. There were high lords jostling from position from day one. There were nobles, there were peasants. It's your very standard traditional fantasy situation, and it really highlighted the differences between the factions in the third dance. When you talk to Vicarians and they're like, wow, you guys keep trying to kill each other. What's the go with that? Because for us, this is a political environment. We're here to like secure important political maneuverings for our cantons and to personally ensure that you can keep your station or rise above your station. And that was like baked into the game pretty early on. So there was a lot of infighting, there was a lot of bickering, whereas the Vicarians, from an outside looking in, they were mostly bickering over more existential things and about like, will the Shi say this and should we listen to that? Whereas we were like, no, the tax policy is wrong. You need to change that. Or I swear to Io, I will send in my knights.
Yeah, right? We're like, well, God says this and God says that. And I was chatting to our gods the other day and this happened. And then what does that mean? And we're all family and love. And you guys are like, my knife is wet from this back. Sorry. Mish?
Yeah, I was going to say, look, I do have a interesting perspective because at the first game, I was a player character in Hathwold, and then switched to Gothenburg from the second game and continued that character. And the game types were very different. And it was super interesting how, I guess, like from like my experience, that I guess some of the stereotypes around those games like can also be inverse. So like my experience in Hathwold was that there was almost 3 like very distinct storylines going on, and at the time I just missed the hook for like the 3 of them. And so there was like the family connection, but it wasn't as, I guess, together as it ended up being in the end, like for like the clan as well. But then when I switched to Gothenburg, because it was still so small as well, that it was a lot more united, and like also just being like the information people that we all just like, it was all like everyone knew everything and there was all of these like interlacing stories, all these beats happening, but everyone, I guess, is very like projective, and that could have also just been the learnings from the first game as well. But I guess echo that the first, like when I was playing like the Vicarian game, it was very spiritual and very like ritual based and doing like small rituals just to get answers, but it was all very like, yeah, answer driven. Like we want to know what's going on. We want answers. Like we need to seek in the divine to get that. But then playing the Garmontian game, it was actually a lot about trust, which is ironic. But there was just like a lot of like, hey, I hope you're just doing the right thing. And if you're not doing the right thing, then like you'll get stabbed. So it was this weird,
Amazing.
like almost inverse at the same time.
No, I love that. Will's got a comment. No, go, Will.
The first game is actually quite interesting because I think I was the only one who was playing the first game from the Garmont perspective. And the second and third dances sold out. But the first game, the only faction in Garmont that sold out was Vord, which was the faction I was in. Gothenburg was like 5 people, and Stralsund was 2 people. And that really also 3 people. Well, it ended up at 2 because someone got killed.
One of them died.
But that really changed the game feel a lot because Garmont were terrified. We're surrounded by these strange pagans in the woods who are weird, and we believe that they're gods or demons, and yet have a strange way of looking at the world, and have, anytime we'd been in a war with them, beaten us utterly soundly. So we had to come together and we're like, all right, guys, we only have like 1 doctor in the entire faction of all 3 of our sub factions. We've got to make some deals here. We have to like get on side, and because if the clans united and decided to take us all out, we really had no option to fight that. And it changed a bit.
Kind of a terrifying thought, isn't it?
The cantons, the culture changed a bit in the second game when everyone was sold out, so everyone had a full faction. But yeah, just from game 1 to game 2, there was that real difference between the games, not from culture, but just from numbers.
Do you want to talk about why you switched from Hathaway to Gothenburg?
Yeah. So at the time on Discord, I remember reading, just like I think it was right at the public release, that a lot of people really wanted to be Hathaway but didn't get a ticket. And I was like, honestly, like the Garmont game seemed really fun too. And I got to try out Hathaway and I got to experience it and I had a good time. But I think it'd be good if someone else who hasn't got to experience it yet, or someone else, or someone new coming to the game who really like wanted to be with Hathaway, like got to do that. And so then I just messaged the team and I was like, hey, I know it's like public release right now. Is it okay if I actually switch from Hathaway to Gothenburg? And then they were like, sure thing. And then they put like another Hathaway ticket up and made that available. So it was sort of like
nice.
I was already on the fence on like if I wanted to try out the Garmont game, especially because like it was so small at the first game as well. And then yeah, from there I was like, I got really excited about the potential of my character. So after I'd sort of gone like, oh, maybe I should, someone else has a go, then I got really excited about the idea of joining Gothenburg. And so then, yeah, I was hooked after that.
Yeah, hashtag Gottenhotties. I'm interested in this idea, Will, that you guys felt outnumbered. And I felt that at the second and third games, there was a feeling from it felt like a lot of the Garmont people were talking about how they said they were coming onto our territory, onto clan territory. And I'm like, well, that's not what was in the law book, but also, like, I get that they felt that. Do you think that was because of that culture setting at the start?
I think it was, it's interesting because I think technically it's on the borderlands, it's on Vord and Dunmore territory. Where the dance happens was kept vague, which is, I think, a good call from the designers. But I think a lot of people saw the dance as this, pagan ritual, even if it was a ritual that was done by all of the factions, both Garmont and Vicaria, that it felt as if the Garmontians were having to step out of their comfort zone. And you mentioned this on the previous live stream, that the first couple of dances felt very Vicarian focused. Like the second dance was literally summoning one of your gods to whether we kill them or not. First one was a bit more generic of like the earth is hungry, do a human sacrifice about it. But yeah, there was definitely this idea that in Garmont, we hadn't had as much of that Garmontian cultural setting. We had a little bit, but it was all internal and canton based. Feel free to say me I'm wrong if I'm wrong, Mish and Elle. But it did feel like we're stepping into a place where there is ritual, where there is magic, and that is the domain of the clans.
I agree, big time. It was also one of the pivotal character decisions I made initially when I decided I was going to go Garmont, is I was like, I'm going to go hard traditionalist Iowite, and I'm going to be staunch about it, and I'm going to like secure our place, because even just like over the first weekend playing a Vicari and being like, ugh, this like Iowite ceremony stuff isn't for me, like it's not what I worship, but seeing a lot of, I'd say like antagonism initially, like a feeling of I want to say like oppression, maybe. It was like the general feeling. I don't think it was ever like said, but a lot of Vicarians sort of, had this like, I guess like negative reaction to like Iowite stuff taking place, which wasn't really happening the other way around, at least not directly. And so when I was like, no, I want to hold space or whatever, like for like Io and that religion, which is why I made Lijsbet so like ruthlessly devout to Io as well, because I was like, we needed those voices in the game because they were so quiet the first one.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that there was a much bigger focus in the Vicarian side of things on ritual. I think ritual was a much more central part of the Vicarian game, and so that I think then lends itself to the dance itself feeling a little more Vicarian, because it's all sort of focused around this ritual. Like obviously it's about the dance of ribbons, so I guess I can understand why people would have that kind of experience, being like, oh, we're kind of stepping on their territory, on Vicarian territory, because this is very ritual sort of stuff, and we don't focus as much on that. Like, there was kind of when we were talking about doing like the gift of ribbons and stuff, and we were trying to figure out like, okay, like we know who the spiritual leaders on the Vicarian side are, right? We know who the Wodens are. Who are the spiritual leaders on the Garmont side? Who, like, we've got the shepherdess, and like, so I feel like that was a little bit more of a smaller game on the Garmont side. It was a bit more politically focused. So I think that probably forms a lot of it.
Do you think?
I do.
Sorry, you go. Well,
I do want to shout out the players in Dance 2 who really jumped onto the Iowite stuff and really ran with it, because that is sort of what pushed me to also lean into it, because there were so many secret pagan people in Vord and in all the other cantons, but I don't know if there was a secret Iowite the other way around. So yeah, like seeing that, oh, actually, this doesn't have to be just Catholicism, except God is a woman and sometimes she's three women. It could actually be its own weird mystical thing, and leaning into this is sort of a pagany but just not, but in a different way, was really helpful to get that vibe. And it's why I also was pushing to do morning prayers on the third dance.
Yeah, nice.
So that the Iowites had a space for people who wanted that game to engage in ritual, which wasn't, which was distinctly Garmontian.
Yeah. I mean, I've played very aggressive priest characters at other LARPs in the past, and morning prayers is a really powerful ritual to make stuff, to get people together and that sort of thing. I was going to say, do you guys think that the less the Garmontians did feel quite devout. They didn't feel very ritual bound or very followy their spiritual leaders that much. Do you think that the design choice to have major bad guys, the major obvious bad guys on the Garmontian side, be church, like in the Inquisition, was a very aggressive bad guy. Do you think that changed how people behaved towards the church in your game?
The Inquisition had sort of always been part of Garmontian lore. Like, even from game one, there was the terrifying thought that the Inquisition could be everywhere, and they were. There was someone who pulled off the mask and said, I've been an Inquisitor the entire time. So there was this sense of like religious authoritarianism all throughout the games, and I do think that changed the vibe of Garmontian ritual. And yeah, we had a couple of really great mystics in the first and second games, and they really pushed it. But I think it took a little bit more time to get going than it did from the mystics on Vicaria.
You had to be careful not to get too ooky spooky with your IO rituals, or maybe they might think that it's, the Inquisition might be like, hey, it's feeling a little too Vicarian for my tastes, got to keep that, real devout, real strict, IO traditionalist.
Yeah. Although Lex just pointed out that there were two, or at least a couple, Iowites in Kilkern. There was one in Hathwood, who was a secret Iowite, and I don't know if Dunmore had any, but so that's at least 3 on our side.
Vicious.
I was gonna just add in on the Inquisition note. I think having the shepherdesses there made that, like, instead of being angry at the church, it's just angry at this specific arm, like the justice arm of the church, because we had that softer, more like, the aspect of mercy from IO represented by the shepherdesses. So we still had something to turn to, and I think Scout was phenomenal at carrying that, especially being the only shepherdess at the last game was a lot of pressure. I'm still not emotionally recovered from Sunday night, though. Don't talk to me about it, but
Don't stop, I swear to God.
I mean, we can.
It was a good arc, at least for me, for what happened with the Inquisition, from, as I said, being such a devout Iowite to having to come to terms with the fact that part of the church was doing wrong, but still finding love for, still having and carrying that love of Io. And I think it didn't necessarily make the game framed like, should you, I guess, it's like, trust in your religion if, like, the religion is doing this. It's like, how do we stand up to the parts of the religion we don't agree with and still continue faith? And that was sort of, I guess, my experience with it. But also, like, my character was, mucking around with her tribunes. So it was a bit convoluted.
That's amazing. One of the most important things about the way we played this game was really driven by the Generous Player Manifesto. Like, front and center of anything the Come Close and Listen put out, front and center of all of the workshops. If you go to the toilets, there's 3 things, and it's like very basic law 1, very basic law 2, Generous Player Manifesto. And that's a major design choice that game made. And I'm interested in your thoughts as on how that changed how you played this LARP compared to others, or how it... I guess this is your first LARP, Elle. How does it, like, make you go, well, that's how I should play LARPs in general? That's the question. You guys talk about that. Go.
The fact that everyone was being told the Generous Player Manifesto really helped cement it, because if one person is being a generous player and no one else is, that doesn't create the environment that makes it succeed. It just means your gameplay will be probably stepped on and not as lifted up. But when everyone is doing the lifting and everyone is being a generous player, that's where the magic is. I could definitely see it's really hard for my example, when I started this game in game 1 and game 2, my generous offer was I am being bad at leadership. The Lade Vord is not doing his job. The country is in ruin. And that allowed there to be all kinds of plots. There were a coup attempt against me, uncountable assassination plots against me, antagonism between two major factions. If I was playing to win, I wouldn't want to have done that. I would have want to focus on how do I play this character the best to make sure that my faction gets on top. But because I knew that everyone needed to give big, generous offers, being able to put yourself into difficult situations that other people could take advantage of, created a lot of gameplay and a lot of really intense stories.
Yeah, I mean, as you pointed out, Dance Ribbons 2 was my first LARP, so I couldn't compare in that experience. But I do think that like mindset did help me go, how do I, play a character that's gonna, create like engagement with other like players that they'll want to like buy into this, right? And the way that I did that was like, I'm just gonna, as a character, make all the worst possible choices and then let somebody do something with that, because I'm like, it's not fun for people. Like it's like in like a tabletop game, right? Like where you've got one player who's just trying to win the whole thing, and that's never fun to play with, right? That never creates good story, where one person's like, I'm just going to be the hero and I'm going to like do all the cool things and I'm going to try and, win this collaborative game. So I'm like, no, I don't want to play that character. I want to play a cringe fail loser who's like just making terrible choices. And that's great for other people to like grab onto and do something with. And I think that, something really great came out of that. And then I kind of took that mentality forward into the third game with like doing the Gallant Order stuff, because I was like, what's an offer that I can give players? What can I give other players like something to interact with? And so I was like, well, having this like faction thing, and then they can come and join, or they can be against us or whatever. And so that was like, I definitely took forward that generous player mentality through to that third game as well.
I think, honestly, for me, it was hard initially finding the right balance between generous and overly generous, where, stepping back too much then is impacting like your own play, and you're not being generous enough to yourself as well. But Jen put in the chat as well that like the generous play manifesto is just now how to play life and LARPs, of like remembering to, I guess, stop and think about like, how does this action like include others? How am I like, how is whatever I'm putting forward, whether it's a LARP storyline or just organizing something with my friends or whatever, like how is this like beneficial for everyone? And just changing that mindset as well of checking in, and like if someone's uncomfortable, like stop immediately. Like I think there's a lot of good life skills in there as well. But yeah, as I mentioned, like initially what I learned from the first game after trying out, I guess, the manifesto was it's like actually sometimes like you can be too generous, and you just have to make sure that it's an equal give and take as well, and like finding your own space without impacting others' spaces as well. So instead of just letting everything else like take you over, because then you're not going to have fun as well, which is also at the end of the day what the manifesto is about. Is about making sure that you're having fun and everyone else around you is having fun as well. And like I say this after having an experience, like I won't talk about it at all because it was addressed and all that stuff, which at the time I was like, I didn't see this as generous, I thought was the antithesis, and I was like, I just feel comfortable enough to walk away from this engage like in this because I don't have to. I don't feel forced to engage with it. And so I just got up and left, and that was that. And I didn't feel bad, didn't feel like I was impacting someone else's play or whatever, because it's like, actually, like, that's not, how we want to play, so I don't have to engage with it. And I said it was a very minor thing. It's nothing serious. It was just like one of those moments where I was like, okay, like, this is what I've learned from, these experiences of playing with the manifesto as well.
And I don't want to be part of this bit. I'm going to go do something else.
Exactly.
And sometimes, and I think that's interesting because this idea that generous play or good play of any kind, whether generous or not, but good play requires the consent of all the players and the buy-in of all the players, right? And if you're not there for it, you don't want to play, then you don't have to. And I think that was something that was also really drilled in by the game designers, right?
At the workshops where they would, at the start, before pretty much any other exercise, it's like, we're going to play the no game. We're going to practice consent. We're going to practice saying no to things, because they wanted us to learn and to build those muscles of saying, actually, this isn't for me. I'd prefer to do something else. And I think it was really good that they had done that, because there's a lot of that, a lot of feelings in LARP where it's like, oh, if I say no to this quest, then I'm not going to get content, so I'm just going to be missing out on all the fun. And then you just have a really bad time because you're doing something that you don't really want to do. So I think it was really good of them to start that all their workshops with that idea that to play, you need to be able to say no, and you need to be able to opt into it.
Yeah, and I mean, at the last workshop as well, they had that point with that game with the chairs and stuff, where it's like, sometimes the best thing to do is actually nothing. Sometimes, you don't have to, sometimes, you can just sit back and, you don't have to throw yourself into like every plot line. You can just, sit back and watch. And sometimes that's the more interesting choice. Sometimes that's like, the better choice. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested in your thoughts about whether... So I think there was times where the game itself didn't necessarily quite live up to that, where there were parts of the games that we didn't get that much choice, that we were, in fact, you've got to do this bit, right? And I would like to hear you guys talk about that.
I definitely feel that was in Game 2 a lot more than Game 3. In Game 2, I remember vividly there was a moment where I'm the king, I'm walking around, and I go to the tavern, it's like, I would like a drink. And then I was directed to, my good sir, perhaps you should go look at the cutscene that's playing out, where the plot is being told to the player base. It's really rather important. There was a lot less of that in Game 3, but that was something where I'm like, I can't really opt out of this. Well, I could just walk off and not pay attention to that.
Yeah.
But it was very much like, no, this is kind of important. Everyone needs to get this. Otherwise, the game doesn't really progress and the story doesn't get told in the right way.
Mish?
Yeah, I was gonna second that. Very much more that at the second game, I felt like the final ritual, and like we already mentioned that, I guess it's the first game, but I'd say definitely the second game storyline itself was very Vicarian, very she focused. And so as someone who was incredibly devout, like, of Io at that ceremony, I was like, why am I participating in this? Because like the game beats that I was involved with hadn't like incorporate, like I just had like, I don't know, whatever plots I was involved with or whatever, like hadn't actually explained the reason why everyone should be doing this ritual. And so I was like, why would I participate in a ritual to the she? Like, I don't understand. I feel like we're doing something. And I actually was standing near the Inquisition at the end of that ritual, and they were like, we've done, like, something terrible's happened here today. Like, we need to get out of here. And I just had this fear, like, as Lijsbet, had this feeling of such dread, like, oh my God, what have we done? What's happened? Why is everyone, like, happy right now? It feels like we've done something wrong, something that we shouldn't have done. And I think that, it's like, no, this is like, the moment where we all come together at the end of the festival. I guess it was sort of more forced, like, you should be involved, like, you should be doing this, but the why, and especially from, like, the point of view of someone who was, like, chummy with the Inquisition in Game 2, that sort of stuff, like, it just wasn't explained well. And then at the end, I'm like, after we, wrapped everything up and went back to, like, our normal selves, I was sort of sad that I wasn't a part of, like, that big coming together ritual at the end, but my character wouldn't have. And so that's where it was that real, like, you should do this thing because it's the coming together thing, and like, you're sort of directed to be involved with it, but at the same time, like, it's not at all what your character would do, and your character doesn't have any reason to be doing it. So yeah, it was tricky.
In the third dance, I felt they really listened to the feedback and took that on board, especially with the we're going to summon our god again. And there was a moment where I believe it was the shepherdess said, all Iowites who wish to protect this ritual come to me, and there was a little sub-ritual so that we could still be involved and we didn't have to go, oh, should we be letting this happen? It gave us a chance to, okay, no, we're still engaging, we're still playing, and still a way for us to get involved without that tonal dissonance of like, oh, don't know about this. Technically, I believe they're all demons.
Is that what you guys were doing over in the corner? Okay, sorry.
Yeah, it was.
Go, Elle.
I think I had a quite a different experience to a lot of people for like Dance Ribbons 2. For like being my first LARP, I didn't have any expectations of what that looked like. So I was just kind of like, yeah, all right, you got some cool like set pieces and stuff going on. This is cool. But I also missed a lot of it because I was just off doing my own player things. So I missed most of the curses. I missed the sleeping curse. The hunt. The only one that I really actually saw was the big Fright Night one, because everybody got involved with that. And, because I was off with, Kieran and Daddy doing a whole assassination plot thing. So I was just like, so I didn't, and also because I was like playing this character who was like very like suspicious of Vicarians and was basically like, I don't want anything to do with that. I like as a player, like, basically made a choice when there was like stuff going on where I'm like, oh, this is like a thing that is happening that, you have to, and I was just like, no, I'm not going to do that because why would I? My character's not suspicious of all of that. So I'm just going to go off in another direction. So I didn't feel as like forced into things as I think people, I guess, felt like they were. I will say, like, because, we talked a bit about this of like what, behind the scenes with like David in terms of how they structured things, right? So they had like nodes, and they had another term. So they had ones where it was like they wanted everybody to kind of be involved with, and then there were like kind of the optional side quest ones. And so then for game 2, they had a lot more of those nodes. So obviously, and I think that was maybe just them trying to as well compensate for double the player base as well. So like, oh, we want to give people things to engage with because we can't do it in the same way that we did in game 1 necessarily because, scale and stuff. But obviously, that led to its own issues. So then game 3, they pulled back on that a lot and made that more like game 1, which, obviously, they did take on that feedback and it worked well for people. But for me personally, I had a great time in both games because I was just like, I'm I have a lot of ability to just go, I'm just going to throw myself into this random plot over here, whatever else is going on. So that was kind of my experience of things.
And that's actually fantastic, right? Because the ability to just go, yeah, you know what, whatever's going on, it's not that big a deal, or my character wouldn't do that, I'm just not gonna. is pretty interesting. Because it was a lot of times when I felt like I couldn't do that. And yeah, less at Dance 1 and 3 than 2, but there were times at all 3 of those games where I'm like, oh, I have to come and watch this thing. Even though I don't particularly want to. And I'm just like, oh, for Mish's courage to just be like, nah, bye.
I exercised my ability to say no.
Yeah, I love that. It's fantastic. Let's talk about heroism and being a hero. Because, I mean, Will was mostly a villain. Sorry. No, I'm sure there were people who...
No, for 2/3 of the game I was a villain.
I mean, on and off, right? You dabbled in villainy. I dabbled in villainy. That's okay. Lijsbet dabbled in villainy.
She's just a cow. It's not even villainy. She's just rude.
And Emery went from being a complete dickhead to being a hero, right? And I think... Conrad, I hate being a good person. That should have been the sticker. That would have been a way better... I'm sorry. Okay. Completely thrown me, Ellie. Now I've forgotten what I was going to talk... No, I was going to talk about... We should. Okay. Conrad had a bunch of ride or dies. I never understood them. But... No, I love you, Will. You're so fun to play with. The question that I was going to talk about is in a game about, and Mish sort of touched on it earlier, where it's a game about generosity and a game about trying to give game to other players, and in some way, all of us here had parts where we claimed the spotlight and just were like, I'm going to be the important one here, and yet everyone still thought we were pretty cool, and so I'm like, how do we balance being a hero, taking the spotlight, and generous play and looking after other players, making sure everyone gets a go and that we're not dominating the game?
I had a moment on Sunday after the Inquisition plot kind of played itself out, because there was all the Gallant Order stuff, and people really engaged with that, which was really cool. I got to give out a lot of banners and stuff to people, and people coming up and asking about what it was about and stuff, which was really cool. But I kept getting you're the leader of the order and stuff. And I'm like, well, I was not technically a leader. But the problem of being someone who's got a really loud voice and is willing to throw themselves into plots is people are like, oh, you're the main character person of this thing. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to take away from other people's experience of things. So it's I was trying to kind of delegate things and go can you find out about this thing or whatever, to try and give people a moment with that. There was, and it didn't always work out. We were talking about doing a heist with the Inquisition, where we'd be like, oh, we want to steal their lantern. And I was like, give that to another person in the order. They can do the heist and stuff, and talk to the team about, putting the lantern into play. And then, going to the mass, going up to the church, and it's like, oh, they've left it here and I'm here, and there's one other order person here. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm taking it then. But I consciously, because I didn't want to just be the only person that was, seen as the face of this moment, I was like, I'm going to take a step back, after lunch. I'm around if you want me for some big plot thing, but I'm going to go off and do a different personal thing for Emery. I'm going to go uncursed year or whatever, and then you guys take the lead with that and like do what you want with it, because I'm like, I don't want to just be the big like hero for this whole faction. I want somebody else to get to do that. And then getting to come back to that, and it's like, oh, Ellie's been as Abigail, like get to be like the you've got the sword and you're going to protect the ritual stuff. I was like, yes, good, hey. So yeah, I think there was like conscious decisions that were like made of like, okay, I want to make sure other people get like a go of that as well. So
it's a difficult needle to thread, especially for, I imagine, Mish, you felt it as well, being a Lade of a faction. Unlike Kelders, where they're sort of more of a support role, you are kind of the boss, and what you say goes, which does mean that you have to be really, really thinking about people out of character a lot when you are stepping into that role, and especially if you are the High Ruler, because that means you're the boss of the bosses. Lake did an amazing job as High Ruler for game 1 and 2, and it's such an intense role, and it's so easy to listen to the temptation, like, oh, actually, it's all about me because I'm the boss with the big crown. I went into this game very explicitly going, I'm going to be so busy because everyone is going to throw plot at me because I've got the big hat. So anyone in my nearby vicinity, I'm just going to go, you now have plot, and give it to them. So delegate. The fact that we had Lade Guard as well also meant that I really leaned into that, because that meant I could create gameplay for 3 additional players in Vort, where I'm like, you are now my Lade Guard. You are here to protect me from assassins. So when people came up to me and said, hey, Will, I want to assassinate you, I said, you can try. Because by not just, saying, okay, you'll kill me on the Sunday night and I'll be really sad. I'm like, no. Work for it, because then that gives content to 3 other players who are now having to watch out for assassins everywhere. And then anytime someone sneaks through, it's like, oh no, that could have been bad. I had a cupbearer who, anytime I went to go drink, I was like, here, drink this. And they were playing a 16-year-old boy. I was like, thank you, me lord, and would drink it. And then, I've just seen a murder. I'm going to have a cry about this. So having that like royal court just gave people the ability to play, so I could just sit back and just be a nexus from which other people could have game, because anytime it got to a certain threshold of like, this is too much for me to do personally, I'm like, that's your problem. And as well, anytime someone came up with a problem with Garmont to me, I would try to actively go, why are you bringing it to me? I'm not Lade of Gothenburg. That's Lijsbet. Lijsbet, what do you think?
Actually, do you know what? I've got a prop for this. This is so stupid, don't worry. So, I actually hate being in the spotlight. No, but actually, like, I joke, like, the crown and stuff, it was so extra, so over the top. Because I do genuinely hate being in the spotlight, especially at LARP, those big moments, like all the self-doubt, all those like thoughts come through, like, oh, people are gonna think I'm not a good role player, whatever. And I did the crown and like the super extra outfit so that I personally felt more like a Lade, and that people would, I guess, see me and be like, oh, okay, that's the Lade. Because I was like, I don't know how to do that, like, big projecting role play where I feel comfortable being in the spotlight, having those big, almost like grandstand moments, right? And it was like my goal going into this game to try and do more of that, and to push myself and find the balance of, I guess, like hero Lijsbet and a little bit of villain Lijsbet. And I remember the first time that I decided to like make a big like stand and like sort of add my 2 cents at a time, and like I just word vomited almost. I just let the thoughts like free flow from my mouth, which ended up working really well because I found a hook for the Sunday story that worked really well. So this was right after the like fright night when everyone was gathered round, and it's like, we have to close the gate, all that sort of stuff. And it was like, oh, close the gate, we have to cut the cord. And I was like, damn, that's such a good like hook. I got to run with it, and I need to spread the word, because like obviously like cutting the cord, it's like cutting the ribbon, but also like literally cutting the umbilical cord of like reliance on the spiritual world as well.
And on the GMs.
Yeah, and on this game, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, this is like I was just like, oh, actually, do you know what? This word vomit, it's got legs, so I'm going to run with it. And yeah, there was this moment on the Sunday at the morning service where I did this whole big spiel about Io being our mother, and how like there comes a point in most mothers' lives where like, she has to let her children go. And this is that time for us. It's going to hurt. It's going to suck. But we can't grow if we stay attached as well. And I was shaking like a leaf this whole thing, because I was like, honestly, like the public speaking of it, everyone staring back at me, it was so intense. But it was also really magical, because I was like, no, I'm so motivated by this. And then the GMs gave me a little treat of like Io literally hugging me right after I did this big speech as well. And then I was like, okay, but the problem is now that you've emboldened me. Like, I know I'm right. So, but it was so intense, and it was still so small scale considering. But it was also the cool thing about Gothenburg is that so much of the stuff we do is in the shadows. And so I never felt like I had to do that like big bravado stuff like what I guess the latest Strassland needs to do, because of I guess like the culture that was developed within that faction, and like the already established character of Conrad having to I guess like maintain that big I guess like bravado as well. And I guess on top of like being Lade, it was a very similar thing where I just had gone into it going like, I'm just going to be a vessel of information. People are going to come to me, like I know from watching the previous games, that people are just going to come to me with information, and my job is just to spread it, is to give it to my people. And it's hard because I think Gothenburg were involved in so many different stories, and I feel there's like still that little bit of guilt that I wasn't as involved with a lot of the internal Gothenburg stories as I would have liked. But also I just had so much trust in the faction as well. And I just had I sort of said from the start, like, if you don't have something to do, if you want information, like if you're lost, you want to do something, come to me, because like that is my role. Like we don't have mechanics. Like Will did as High Ruler, he could tax people. But like my mechanic was like just being able to carry a dagger, and I could read and write. That was it.
I didn't actually have any ability to tax people.
Not this time.
Was
not this time.
Previous games, and I was just being loud and hoped no one would notice.
No one questioned it.
Yeah,
I thought it was a High Ruler thing, but anyway, like we didn't have mechanics like we did previously with the taxation thing.
Yeah.
So I just accepted that our mechanic was receiving information and then giving it out, and being almost like a support role for the faction, so that if people didn't have something they could do, they'd go, oh, we'll go check on the Lade. Yeah. We'll see like what she's up to. And then someone would be like, oh my god, did you hear they're trying to resurrect the previous Lade of Strasslands? What are you going to do about it? And I'm like, I don't know. I'll send some people out to gather information, I guess. Or, this person's just been murdered. Like, hey, like you, do you want to go look into that? Help out? But yeah, I guess like my story was more involved with like the Conrad plot, and I guess almost a greater Lade game that was sort of happening. So yeah, it was complex, but managing the spotlight is so tricky and so terrifying. So I'm in awe of people who can do it so well.
Yeah, and I think that there was a couple of things there that I really want to pick up on. One is the embodiment in costume giving us I don't know, powers and confidence that we don't otherwise have. Because I know for me, a lot of Aunt Niamh's aura was tied up in the mask and the wig and the veil and the wig and the horns. And so, and I think that's true of basically any good LARP character, is that lots of who they are is their accoutrement. But the other one was around mechanics, where the Kelders, as far as I know, basically lost their mechanics, because their big one was being able to call merchants, and then that went away. And they didn't seem less powerful for it to me. And I'm interested, and I mean, Niamh had a giant pile of pet superpowers, and I think I cast one spell at Dance 3. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about how you used mechanics, or how you didn't use mechanics?
Yeah, totally.
Can I start with this one? I didn't. I never did. No, actually, that's a lie. I did once. I did like one official contract in the second game as a scholar, right at the very, very end, which was the trade agreement. That happened. But the first game, I was a mystic, oracle, and what I was sort of getting on before, where I sort of had to learn about generous play is also finding room for yourself, is that whenever there was a problem where it's like, oh, we need to do like a ritual or like oracle vision quest thing, who's going to do it? And I was like, oh, I'm just going to let like whoever really wants to do it. And I never put myself forward. So I was involved with other people's rituals, and like Danny, who played Dior, was a White Heart at the first game. She did the
Rip Faye,
I think
the
like
White Heart.
the first ritual of the game on the Friday night.
Yeah.
Where we did this whole thing, and we did that. Like, it wasn't my ritual, it wasn't like my vision. I just helped out, and then we did like other smaller ones, and then I just never did them. But at the end of that first game, my character lied and said she'd done one to find truth because she felt like she wasn't being listened to or taken seriously. But she had her own issues with like doing visions as well, like they were both a blessing and a curse. And so then she just lied about doing one. But I'd never actually just done the mechanic myself. And then at the second game, I signed one contract, which was just, if anything, sort of just props. Like, it was just cool, we signed a contract. It didn't actually have any in-game thing. It wasn't like an oath stone where someone could die if they broke it. It was just a contract. And then that was it. So, but I had fantastic time all three games. They're great. And I mean, obviously the Medicus skill and mechanic was super important. And there's other ones which are also super important, but you could have just as good a game without having to do any mechanics, and I know I did.
Yeah, the mechanics for the Lade, I've got the sheet right here, were martial allowance. So you got a weapon token and the ability to use the weapon. I'll put a pin in that. I'll come back to that. Well read, you can read. Knightly retinue, you can choose 3 knights, which was giving mechanics to other people, which was very interesting. You picked 3 people, and if they were a marshal, they got a second health ribbon. If they were not a marshal, they got a marshal token. So it allowed you to just generate more people with swords, which I used to create my Lade Guard. I had 2 pretty new LARPers and another person who'd done a bunch of Swordcraft before, who I pitched the idea. There we go. I pitched the idea. Hey, did you want to be my Lade Guard? It'll give you right, it'll give you a job, and that'll give you content for the entire weekend. So my mechanics were there to give other people mechanics to give other people gameplay. And then diplomatic relations, which was you have had diplomatic relations with other factions. This will be determined by prior to the game, and the DOR team will work with you to help shape these relationships. I think a lot of that was just things that had happened beforehand will be remembered. And I did get a little bit of cheeky information about the Fae from David, which was quite delightful. But yeah, mechanics, I didn't use pretty much any of them except for the ones that gave other people gameplay, because I didn't bring a sword with me very explicitly. As you, Josie, costuming is such a big part of the character, and shout out to Mish for making me look like a king. I didn't have a sword. Instead of having a sword, I had my in-character daughter's pet teddy bear there. So anytime I would have to go to my sword belt, I would just be reminded of my character's child. And that was just a rejection of character, created more roleplay opportunities, because then I could pull it out and like go, have a look, the king has a teddy bear.
That's
Tell my daughter a
delightful.
story.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Elle, tell us about mechanics.
Yeah, look, I didn't realize in the second game, because it hadn't been explained to me. I don't know if it carried on, but someone told me after being Lijsbet meant that I could read. So I didn't know that until like after the game. And I'm like, what? I could read the whole time. So I was a marshal both games. Outside of a tournament, I hit people with my sword twice, once in each game. So I didn't really like use the mechanics very much. I think especially being a marshal as well, because it's not like a battle game, like it's not quite as important. Like I think like in the third game they wanted to make it clear, both with like say like the scholars and the marshals, in terms of like we want to make sure these players have this exclusive thing to do, because you know obviously in previous games people had like brought weapons, or like people were like, oh, I can read or whatever, and so then you know people maybe felt like a little bit sidelined or whatever, in terms of like they couldn't use they could use their mechanic but it wasn't as important or something, you know, like they didn't get the opportunity to really utilize that like mechanic in game, because they're like, oh well, other people are also doing it. So I think it was a good move on the game runners part to make sure that like that was really emphasized, like the importance of those mechanics for different classes. But yeah, for me, I was just like, I'm just having a fun time playing pretend. I don't necessarily like need mechanics to do that. You know, I like obviously it's like it's a helpful like kind of boundary, and it kind of like sets like the tone for your character and like what they're kind of able to do and like their mindset. So like with marshals, for instance, one thing that they really emphasize, like David and Josiah were like, if you're a martial character, if you've been given leave to carry a sword, that means you have the mentality that you're prepared to potentially kill someone, right? And so like that kind of informs the way you play that character, even if you don't necessarily like use those mechanics. So I think that's
and I think
important
Mish
thing.
had a thing, but I want to follow up on that afterwards. So you go, Mish, and then me.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, like, from the first game, my dear friend and housemate, Andreas, who very bravely was a Frankian at the first game, and was a martial character, was like, a sword at this type of LARP is like having a gun. Like, it is, and it should be treated with such, I guess, like, levity of, like, this can kill people, but also that when one is drawn, it should be an extreme feeling. Like, it should be like, whoa, 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 like, what's going on? Let's calm down type thing. And also, like, Ellie put in the chat of, like, still think the main benefit of Marshall was having a sword, not using one. And it reminds me of, like, when we had the discussion with Ellie about, you know, you're going to carry the, like, sacred sword. And then I was like, I I trust you to not have to use it until it's absolutely dire, because there was that. And I guess, like, from the scholar point of view, from the second game, that I guess in a similar way to how swords could be used as like a threat, my writing was also almost a threat. Before we had all the propaganda stuff come out for the third game, that when we did the High Ruler's Court, is I was writing everything down. And so if people, said stuff, I literally had receipts. I was like, I had receipts. And I just decided to do this because I just decided that my character was a scholar in the court, and like that's how she's a gossip, is because she, is a scribe for like court stuff. And she went, oh, did you hear this? Like, this person came to petition court. Turns out they're broke. How cringe, whatever. But I got so much feedback afterwards about how awesome it was to have someone there, like, writing everything down, just like the vibe it created. And I was like, oh, I was just doing this as like a prop and like a character thing, and I didn't realize how much, like, using that mechanic, I guess, of being able to write helped out so many other people. But I was like, oh, whatever. It's like I didn't really use it, but then I got the feedback that, oh, actually it added a lot to other interactions, right? So, and I think swords are similar, where it's like the presence of one feels like a gun. And, when there are marshals, like, had to draw one or bring one out rather than using it, that, I guess, like, yeah, importance around having one added for other people. But I do agree that I think the feedback they took on about how marshals and scholars and stuff are utilized was done a lot better in Game 3 as well.
Yeah,
I would say, Mish, that one of my favorite interactions with you in Game 2 was throwing Carafina in the shit with the Inquisition and having you like write this all down on the side, and then having that like kind of interaction with you of like, I feel like I should go. Should I go? And you're like, yeah. Like that was just like, because you're just like writing it all down, and it was just like
I felt like the like front desk lady at like a school or something. Like, you can go now, sweetie. You can go. It's fine.
Like you don't need it anymore.
The first thing I said to your character, Mish, was, "Stop writing that down. Don't write it." But yeah, you as court stenographer is what actually made me want to go, actually, I can't roleplay a king myself. Playing a king requires everyone else to treat you like a king. Yeah. You just rock up and like, no, I'm in charge. You're not in charge. You need people bowing. You need people going, my lord. You need people, doing the halt, you shall not enter, with the halberds. All of that is what makes majesty happen.
Yeah, any man who must say, I am the king, is no king. Right? Like, it's that thing. And I think it's the same with, for me, it was like, when we're talking about the important part of a marshal is not the fact that they stab people, it's the fact that they have the sword and they have that power and that threat and that responsibility. And I think it's the same with Aunt Niamh having, the Book of Magics or whatever, where it's like the actual thing of that is partially the threat of it, and partially like how it informs play, and also partially the embodiment of it, where it's like, the fact that Emery has a sword makes that character a kind of person, and it makes you play that character in a way, and having a pile of spells does the same thing, even though the only ones I cast were like, like cast 5 spells over 3 games. And mostly the best mechanics are the ones that inform your character and make it interesting, or the mechanics that provide game to other people. We're going to take a break in about 5 minutes. Is there anything that you guys wanted to pick up from the chat or add on to that conversation?
Fellow former Lade Shahan is also in the chat. Shout out, Guillaume. See you there.
Love to hate you.
It was great having
It's funny, he did
Shahan.
mention he did mention like that interactions had extra weight when we knew like I was writing everything down and I was listening to everything. And yeah, because I knew everything about you and I sledged the hell out of you with all of that stuff.
Shahan as the third Lade going into Dancery was a really fun like antagonism there, because the fact that the High Ruler's Ball happened, I think, was just to go back to the difference between Garmont game and Vicarian game. Every 10 years, there's a new High Ruler that's elected, and in the first game, that one was tricky to do, and I'm glad that it came out the way it did and was a landslide victory to Carafina, because it was difficult figuring out how that election went, and I think sectioning off the election to a side game where it's just Garmont and Vicaria doesn't need to pay attention to, oh god, what are the nobles talking about? Oh, who's going to be king? Oh, I don't care. What made it, everyone there was interested in the plot that was happening, and it allowed all the content that happened at the dance to be about the ending of the dance, which I think was a really smart idea from the designers.
Yeah,
I wanted to pick up on what Ellen was saying about, like, it was fun being sent to fetch things and pour drinks. It's interesting thematically helping someone else be important makes your character feel important too. Yeah, and I think that that's like really important too. Like having, like, you know, like you were saying, Will, like, you know, being the Lade, like so much of what you're doing is giving other people things to do, right? Like you're delegating a bunch of stuff, which gives other people that feeling of importance by like being connected to that. Yeah, and I think that's a really important point to make.
I want to pick that up. So there's that thing where I had the Game of Thrones quote about anyone who has to say, and here is a thing that you can do if you're as cool a person as Shahan is, where you can be like, I want to be the arrogant, undeserved, blah, blah, blah. And one way to make yourself do that is always tell everyone you are the Lade, right? Because if you have to do that, then it tells everybody else. It's that show for everybody else. That's actually excellent. I love that point. Yeah, we're going to cut for like 5 minutes. We will be back at 9:25. We've got more conversations with the only 3 cool Garmontian players.
There's so many in the chat. I wouldn't say that.
Oh no, the Garmontians might be upset with Aunt Niamh.
I think the first thing I did with your character on Dance one is throw water in Atney's face.
You did! We had a fight because you wanted to go to bed instead of staying in the bar, and you're like, can we have a fight about it? That was so good. Yeah, but Danny, you don't count because you were in my heart. You're always Faywin. So no, it's true. The Garmontian players are awesome. I love all you. But point is, we'll be back with these 3 fabulous people and me being a wanker about it in about 5 minutes. There's a teddy bear. See you all very shortly. Hello everyone, we're back with our second retrospective of Immersive Arts Melbourne with the Dance of Ribbons. We all have cats now, except my cat really doesn't want to be here. Okay, she's very protective of her privacy. We thought we should reward you all for sitting through the break. Thank you. If you had to leave during the break, thank you for being here. And we are going to have this one up via VOD immediately afterwards. So anyone can just watch it straight afterwards on the Twitch. And we will also have it on the YouTube before... Oh, hello, cat! On the YouTube before too long. Last fortnight's episode is on the YouTube. It's not on the Twitch because I am very much learning this as I go. and that's okay and good, and we grant ourselves grace from that. We are doing a Dance of Ribbons retrospective. Little bit of a chat, but yeah, Garmontians. Okay. Let's do a quick run around, say who you are, and say one thing that you learned about yourself from the Dance of Ribbons. And then we will, and then I think Mish wants to tell us a story before we get on to the rest of the stream. So let's start upwards. Go, Elle.
I'm Elle. And what did I learn? I learned that I could, I guess, cry on cue. I didn't know I could do that, so that's something.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Will?
So I'm Will, and I learned that sometimes it's okay and actually better for the game as a whole if I just sit down for an afternoon and don't run around everywhere. It made every other player who was involved in my personal plots so much happier when they said, "Oh God, the High Lade is now just sitting down for the afternoon." Sweet.
I have not yet learnt that lesson. You'll have to teach me.
Fantastic.
I'm Mish, and I learnt that LARP can move you dramatically, and you can have situations where, like, the level of emotions you feel can be massive, because I'd never had that before, and I was always jealous of people, or envious of people who had that.
Amazing.
And I got to have it.
I love that.
And I learnt that it is real and not fake.
Yeah, I'm Josie, and I learned from the dance that having a community manager is incredibly important for making the game go. So I think I want to just quickly go. The Immersive Arts Melbourne are an organisation that started because we made a game called Zeppelin, and the purpose of the game was to show that the weekend foam LARP could be art, and that we could make people feel and care about characters, or to ask the question, can we do that? And then from there it went into other games and all of that, and I think that we answered that question for ourselves, and I think that the dance answered it more or less emphatically for everyone. Like, that's art, done. What? Mish, you wanted to tell us a story, and I wanted to eat sundae on stream.
Sounds good. Yeah, so I guess another thing I learnt about doing Dance of Ribbons is that I can make pretty good fancy looking kit and costumes, and I really love it. And that work makes me really proud, and I really like putting a lot of thought into what I'm making and making it, I guess, something that can be used over and over again, and not, I guess, do single-use costumes, making them very practical. But when I talk about putting a lot of thought into the costuming, is that for the previous dance, I'd actually started making myself, for Lijsbet, a red work embroidery collar and cuffs to make a chemise with. But I never got it finished in time because I was rushing through making Shahan's kit, which I prioritized because I was like, he's a Lade Straussland, and like, you know, he's the like head honcho now. I really wanted, because he was just wearing my like other LARP, like my Soulcraft kit for game 1. And so I was like, no, we should make you your own kit, and like you should have your own vibe and all of that sort of stuff, so that you feel like the Lade when you wear it. So I started there, and I didn't get to finish my own chemise, whatever. And then in the lead up to the third dance, Will had reached out about getting costume done, and because I still had this red work embroidery idea in my mind, I was like, what about a black work embroidery shirt? And I did this custom design work with Will for like what sort of symbols we wanted to do. So I had the 3 aspects of Io, some triangles, and then Conrad's like personal symbol of like the apple included in that design as well. And finished that. The shirt looked amazing. Super happy with it. And I'm like, yeah, I will finish my red work chemise that I'd started for Lijsbet for the 3rd game when she's Lade. And then I was like, oh, well, Will and I are going to have like coordinated shirts. But Shahan won't, because I hadn't made one for Shahan. But I told him about it, and then I can't remember. I remember I was actually ironing something. I was working on some costume, and I was like, I can't even write this out. I'm just going to send Shahan a voice note right now, being like, hey, this is like the shirt I've made for Will. This is what I've made for me. I think you should have the same thing, but it should be a black shirt, because you're the like black sheep of the Lade family. And I was like, I don't have there's the embroidery. That's the cuffs on the sleeves. So I've just decided that the Justice is the most Conrad one. And then there's the collar. So you can see there's the heart for the mother, the scales for Justice, and the sword for the Reaper, because slice would have been too awkward. And a bunch of triangles, and then the little apples as well. But I was like, Shahan, I don't have time to make you a shirt, so I'm just going to have to tell you how to make one. And then Shahan's partner did, I was like, maybe white embroidery, because then it's sort of like the inverse of what Conrad has. But then instead, Shahan's partner, Nicole, she did gold wheat embroidery, which I thought was really good, because then it's also like, oh yeah, I'm Guillaume, I have gold embroidery as well. But like these tiny little details, it just made me so chuffed. And like I think only the 3 of us knew about it, but it's such a good like aspect of how in LARPs you can have this such like micro level of storytelling and characterization in just these small things that not everyone has to know, not everyone has to pick up on it, but you know, those decisions feel right for the character and feel right for the story we're trying to tell as well. And I think I'd even said before the game about how the 3 Lades going into the game, like we're almost at 3 different stages of consequences, where I was like, Guillaume, I kept saying Shahan, but Guillaume has to die as a consequence of his actions because he's too far gone. Like there is no redemption for Guillaume. Like he's done way too much bad stuff. Like a good ending for him will be getting stabbed in a gutter, which is what happened. A bit earlier than everyone anticipated, but you know. And then I was like, but Conrad has to live with the consequences of his actions. Death is such a cop-out. So many people wanted Conrad to die because of like the stuff that he'd done, but I was like, no, he has to live with that. And like that's like I think like Conrad has to live with the consequences of his actions and learn to live with them as well, and like forgive himself for being like a young hot-headed, you know, fish out of water, I guess, as well. And then Lijsbet, on the other hand, like I was like, it'd be such a waste if Lijsbet died, because she's yet to face like she's only ever really dealt with the consequences of other people's actions, which is like where she picked up being a Lade in the middle of a famine, and you know, having like literally 30 seconds into being elected the Lade, it's like, okay, now you have to repay this debt that you owe Franker, and you have to do it in like an hour and a half. And like, you know, she was a young party girl, and he was just like, you know, courtly gossip, and you know, was just scribing as a way to, you know, get all the salacious information on people, to then suddenly being in charge. It was like, no, like Lijsbet has to survive because she deserves peace as well, like, and deserves life. And I think that was so cool to me. And it was like, it didn't impact anyone else, but just being able to see that get played out as well was incredibly satisfying. That what I thought should happen to the three of us, I guess, is what ended up happening.
It's what
That was
kind
my
of
little
did,
story
right?
about
No,
the
that's-
shirts.
I love that. But I love that there's that thing about the tiny little details in your kit that no one else needs to actually know about, but that inform your play and your character. Because for a lot of the ones in the clans were little tokens that we gave each other. And like I had all these little like at the first one I turned up and I had and Gareth had like made Dunmore tokens for everybody in the clan. And he's like, oh, and I'm going to give one to you that you can wear because like Aunt Niamh is Math's best friend and that's a thing. And so I just tied it to my belt and like had that forever. And it's still on the belt. But like no one else needs to know about that. But it's something that matters to my play and that affects that and informs that. What about you, Elle? You weren't a Lade. You didn't have a cool shirt. Actually, I don't know. You probably had quite a cool
I wouldn't
shirt.
say that. I think
I mean, I didn't. I
You
didn't
had
have
a metal
cool Lade
shirt.
I did have like I think my favorite piece of kit was my like sash, my Gallant Water sash 3, because it really just sort of like told you like pretty upfront, like, you know, this is what this character is about. This is like their whole deal. But I did have like littler pieces as well. So I had like I've made this comment a couple of times, like to people, where like Emery between sort of like game 2 and game 3, and even like at the end of game 2, where like Emery starts like feeling remorse and is like, oh, maybe the Vicarians aren't so bad, and like that was the point at which I got so many trinkets. I just ended up with like a lot of janglies because I was just like, all the Vicarians were all like, yeah, here's some trinkets. And I was like, man, these guys are pretty all right.
Yeah,
actually.
we love trinkets. Like clansfolk love trinkets. We do.
So I took that. I took that like kind of philosophy into Emery in game 3, where I was like, well, now that they've kind of expanded their like worldview and, you know, they're more sort of like open to like these Vicarian like ideas, I gotta have more trinkets. Like I gotta have like more like jangly bits. So I had like a lot of necklaces, and they all kind of like represented like different things. So I had one which was like a white stone, and that was for like the Gallant Order stuff, because it was like a gold necklace and then like white stone. I had one which was like the big one, which was like the like blue kind of one. That was the one I ended up giving like Abigail, and that I think I decided was like from my time in Hathwold. I had like the little shark tooth and stuff, so I had like a lot of like different like pieces, and they all like represented like different things along like Emery's journeys, like things that they picked up during their time like in like Vicaria and stuff. So that like helped me as well, like adding all those like layers of things, which was really fun, like trying to go to the bathroom, but like in terms of like the character, like really like added to like the kind of mindset of like who this person was now, which was like different.
And it's also powerful, like when you get up in the morning and you put your character on. I don't know. I know some people sleep in character, and it's never something I want to do. But like you get up in the morning, you put your character on, and like picking up all those little bits and tying those things on feels like putting the character on to a degree.
Yeah, it's like kind of this like slow process of like you're becoming this like character. And then of course like by like day 3, so like end of like the Saturday, where like Emery's eye gets taken out, and then like has like the Gallant Order like sash across the eye, and it was like such a good like it really like added to this character, like all like they got like stabbed like 3 times, you know, so you really and like I had like blood across the breastplate as well, so it was just like this slow evolution of the costume that's also like as Emery gets increasingly, you know, beat up through the game as well. So really
the costume evolves like, just over the game.
With, like, mindset. Yeah.
One thing I thought was really funny was at the first game, I'd lent Shahan this big purple coat that I have, which among my friend group we'd called Mendoza's pimp coat. Which was because it's this massive Henry VIII inspired wool coat, and it has 5 meters of wool in it. It's huge, and it's heavy.
Yeah.
And because it's purple, I was like, Shahan, you could borrow it for the dance. If it's cold, you can wear it. And I was like, just be careful though, because when you put it on, it makes you stand differently and you will walk differently, and you will have a swagger. It comes naturally. It's a powerful coat. And then when I was doing, I guess, the design discussions as well, I was like, I would love to see Conrad in this type of coat as well. It might be hot, and it was, so he might not wear it, but I was talking about how Conrad would wear the shoulder armor, and that was a similar thing, right, to give that silhouette. And the shoulder armor does the same thing, where it sort of pulls you back and pulls your shoulders back. And I was like, well, we can do the same thing with costuming. You don't have to wear rigid leather armor all day. That seems so painful. I look at you and I feel secondhand pain from the belts under the arms. I was like, this can't be painful. But then seeing Will try on this coat for the first time and then having the exact same thing of it fully pulling you back, and then it's oh, you sort of have to, you gotta do a little swagger when you walk, and seeing oh, I'm big and I'm powerful, I'm the king. Was good. And
feeling wide is such a good feeling when you're oh, I am taking up space, and that's everyone else's problem now.
Yeah, until you have to get through the dinner tables.
Walk different.
It does.
But just the change of weight of the garment would just make you walk different. And on the almost the opposite is that the fabric. My costume I'd made for Lijsbet in the third game was exactly the same as her costume in the second game. I just used different fabric. So she had a tan sort of underdress and then a red overdress, and I just used the exact same patterns that I'd already made and just used nicer fabric. So she wasn't changing her identity. She just had more money now. And
amazing.
Felt that she could be more ostentatious. But the fabric was also, because it was a brocade, it was also very delicate.
Yeah.
So when I walked around with it, it was oh, this is very expensive. So I'm walking carefully, and I'm being mindful of the way I moved myself, and it made me just walk a lot more elegantly as well, because I was just so painfully aware of how easily my fabric could get snagged on stuff. But it also added to just the way that when I played Lijsbet, how I held myself, and the big drapey sleeves, because I didn't want to knock stuff over, so I was very, I don't know, demure in my movements or whatever. And it's amazing how that sort of stuff really helps with how you play the character, but even on a not even being that aware of it happening until after.
It reminds me of that thing. Sorry. Did either of you guys want to follow up on that before we move to the next question?
I really liked Mish, again, shout out to you for making the third costume, because you can see Conrad's character development through the clothes he wears. First game, he's just a woodsman who's wearing leather armor and a green shirt, and there's no idea what he's doing here. Second one, he's got a leather vest and is slightly nicer, big, thick crown, thick enough that it could stop a dagger. But by the third game, it's I wanted to look kingly. I want to look royal. And you absolutely nailed it. And it was such a difference in vibe, and also a difference in color as well. A lot of that green became more understated, a lot more blacks, a lot less browns. It was, really fun having that journey in that 5-year time gap. You could feel that the character had changed purely by what pants he puts on in the morning.
Yeah, whereas Aunt Niamh had the same costume. Sorry, Elle.
Yeah, armor, so that which belonged to Danny actually. So shout out to
And
Danny
Danny
for
would
that.
like you
But,
to make sure you
yeah,
clean the blood off.
Yes, I
Sorry.
did. I did. It was one of my I was like, I've got to keep it for like the third day because it was like the progression. But then after that, but yeah, wearing that definitely Mish, you were saying about it kind of changes and Will your stance changes, your stride changes. So I didn't wear it the whole time, but when I wore it, I feel kind of more powerful and knightly and more I'm so when I had that big confrontation with the Inquisition where they were gonna capture me and whatever, I was like, I've got to put on all of the I'm not going to wear it again after this because it's going to be too hot, but I need to make sure I have all of the pieces so I feel the most knightly possible in this scene to really get inside this character. So I had the shoulder piece and all the pieces
the
on. And I wore it
bits,
for I think an hour or something, but that was important for that moment, just in terms of my mindset, if nothing else. And the sword as well, you when you're resting your hand on a sword, man, there's something that just feels so good about that. You're just
it's hot.
You really it really affects how you think about a character and how you move with that character.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, we are going to move to this question, which was one of the questions I also asked of the clansfolk, and it goes: how will playing the dance change the way you play or write or run LARP? How is it going to, what's the single most important lesson that you're going to take forward into other games? I think for you, Will, I really want you to talk about writing and running because I think the other two are primarily players. But yeah.
Yeah. So the health mechanic was something that has stood out to me and has not been able to leave my brain ever since seeing it. It is so evocative. So in other LARPs, how you figure out health is always a struggle. It's okay, how many hits do you want people to take in a fight? And that means every fight is also doing mental arithmetic. It's okay, I can take one more hit and they can probably do... No, it's just a ribbon that someone is pulling. There's something magical about that. You can see it. That's what I'm going to be chasing. Mechanical design that links the thematic nature of what is happening with an evocative movement or physical representation and has no counting whatsoever. I don't think many people want to be doing maths while also pretending to be, a noble knight. It's not something that makes engaging with a character easy. You want your mechanics to be very, very visceral, very visible, and very easy to grok without having to go, all right, did I have 6 HP or 2 HP? I'll just die. So that is one thing that Dance of Ribbons has inspired me, trying to capture that and to make sure that my mechanics aren't falling back on the easy option, which is mathematics. In tabletop role-playing games, it's all mathematics. You've got D20s, you've got dice pools, you've got modifiers. That's the easiest thing to lean on because it's that shared language and you've got all of that. But in LARP, you can lean more into the theater aspect. You can lean more onto mechanics that use different styles of finding out outcomes and representing that.
Nearly lost the mute button for a second there. I think for me, the biggest takeaway is going to be the generous play manifesto. I think, I sort of covered before, just how it impacts viewing roleplay situations and how I want to roleplay and how I want to engage with others in roleplay as well. And, as I said, just in life as well. I think that's going to be my biggest takeaway. But also, like for me, I've always been within my comfort zone at LARP, with it primarily being at Soulcraft would be like the most regular, and like attending like the Ballarat quest and like the Melbourne quest, but also previously through Black Powder and Bloodlines, is that I always sort of just ended up role playing within the same circles and like the same like comfort zone. I wouldn't really like go out and like engage with people I don't know very well, or like, you know, get into stories where I'm like, oh, what's going on here? That type of thing, like you could do at Dance of Ribbons.
Absolutely.
And I guess just having a bit more like faith in myself that when I can actually role play, that like I can. That I you know, just that imposter syndrome of like, oh, am I bad at this? You know, that sort of stuff. But also just going like, oh, it's actually so rewarding when you do go out of that comfort zone as well. And like, it obviously isn't going to be as good every time, but just having that like next time I do another LARP of, you know, I don't have to stick within my exact friend circle to be having a good time as well. So those are the big lessons to me anyway.
Yeah, and I think like that's when you do go outside that group, often you meet like lifelong friends, right? Like you can make new and connections, and amazing things can happen. Elle.
Yeah, I mean, like to echo what Mish said, like the whole concept of the generous offer has been quite inspiring to me. Like, you know, you're talking earlier about like what have we learned, and I'm like, I actually found I learned how much I enjoy facilitating play and like seeing how that carries out across like other people's stories and stuff, and going, oh man,
that.
I want to do more of that, and I want to like I want to, you know. So now I'm like, should I like start figuring out how to run a LARP? Like
there are like, 5 people in the chat who just went, I'm going to recruit Elle, and one of them was Will. I saw it written across his forehead.
Well, I'm looking at potentially, depending on if we get accepted, there's Conquest. There might be one that I'm helping out with, GMing for. So I want to, so I, you know, depending on how that goes, but I want to get sort of more behind the scenes experience. So this whole like culture of like the generous offer and being like, hey, like what can you provide to people? I'm like, I want to do even more of that. I want to like be able to provide a whole like experience for people, you know, as well. So like I've definitely like taken that and gone like, man, I've got some ideas, and like I want to get more experience in that, and yeah, maybe I'll you know, run something, you know, in the future, some kind of one shot. So
that's awesome and delightful. One of the things that we are going to be doing through Immersive Arts Melbourne is we're going to talk about ways of helping people do that. One of which is the pilot season stuff. One of which is going to be we're going to try and work on the insurance problem. And there's some other things. Caligo Mondays also does a bunch of work around helping new game runners get stuff going. There's a new group just doing stuff. We're going to run a conference, an unconference, which is going to be about as technically effective as, about as technically capable as this thing. But it'll be better because we're going to get other people to do the tech stuff and not me. And it's just going to be around getting new people into LARP. Oh, getting people who are excited about LARP, running LARPs, because then I get to play them, and that's good for me. But yeah, so I'm really excited to hear that what you're taking is like, oh, I want to run game. There will not be an Amorian panel discussion. I'm sorry. We're going to move on. I'm really sorry, but like, yeah, no, we're like this. thing. The last two have been the Dance of Ribbons retrospectives. We don't want to spend all of our time doing Dance of Ribbons retrospectives. I'm sorry. I do love the idea of hearing those things and going through those conversations, but I also think that we want to be talking about more stuff and new stuff and ongoing stuff. Yeah, all of those things. Okay, so next question goes... Oh god, I've lost my questions. Help me. Okay, there we go. What is next for you in LARP? What's coming up? Conquest is coming up. What else do we want to know about?
So I'm actually... I'll show you my living room currently. That is...
Oh, that's the new Blood Bowl book. That's exciting. Sorry.
That's all the prep I've got for the LARP I'm running on Saturday, the playtest. So that's coming right up. But I'm also running a thing for Caligo Monday, which is how to write a freeform, where I am taking your position and asking for very intelligent, very experienced LARP writes. Hey, how do you actually do this? Because one of the big things that helped me in coming up with the concept and putting it all onto paper was being able to go to some really experienced GMs and go, hey, am I actually doing this right? Like, what do I need to include? Where do I start?
It's important. It's so valuable. Yeah.
And I had that privilege because I'm friends with them. And part of me was like, well, not everyone has that, and I would like to be able to play in more LARPs. So what if I just got people to ask questions and feel more comfortable about where to start, so that in future I might be able to play in more games.
And if all of the cool people in the chat and the VOD and blah 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 wanted to see that and go to that, well, how would they do it?
They would do that by going to the Caligo Monday Discord on the 29th of November, so next Saturday, at 2 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time, where it will go for about an hour and a half. And links and more information to that will be forthcoming.
Yeah. You're going to post them in the chat very shortly?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. What about you, Mish? What's up? How are you going to, come down from making the costumes for 3 of the faction heads?
I'm gonna not do anything for a while, I think. No, actually, Will's already been like, so maybe help out with my Lost Settlers kit.
Yeah.
Check in with you about that.
No, I can do Spanish stuff. It's easy. For me, I think I'm excited to sort of breathe for a bit. I've been obviously my personal life's been hectic for one, but I guess the idea of being a Lade and just at the final dance, I had so much pressure on myself to perform and do well, and I was constantly thinking about it, and I was always constantly sewing, whether it was doing Will's kit or then my own kit, and just thinking about all of the little things, all that sort of stuff, and just making sure I go and actually relax for a bit, I think. But that being said, I love making costumes. I love doing that, so I'm not going to stop doing that anytime soon. But I think my plan is to put a bit of more love into my warband that I run at Swordcraft, which I haven't actually run for a while. And given that they're changing setting and everything at the moment, put a bit of love into that, but added comfortable energy. And then I'm excited to try some of the smaller scale LARPs next year.
Yeah.
So I hope there's the talks of a courtly one that I hope I get to do. And
tell us about that. What courtly one?
I don't know
Who's
much
talking
about
it? Tell us the things. If you're in the chat, people.
Pilot season.
Oh shit! I should know about that. Okay, that one. That's all right.
August
isn't here. No, that's fine. It's going to be featuring fairly heavily on this channel within the next, 3 or 4 episodes. Courtly LARP.
Just as long as it doesn't clash with the Abbey Medieval Festival. Pretty please don't do that to me.
I cannot imagine that the person who is running that will want that to happen.
I don't know. I don't think many people go up to Queensland for that. But that's the other
That's
thing I
true.
do on the side as well is doing reenactments. So
Yeah.
hopefully do a little bit more of that. But I'm excited to just play, I think, and just see what comes around and try out some of the smaller stuff. Like I think some of our friends are talking about maybe trying out the vampire one at some point and just see what people make out of Dance of Ribbons as well.
Yeah,
and
right.
go along and support and just play. That's
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, for those of us with other commitments but hopes to get in on lap running eventually, it will be recorded, you say? Your panel on how to make a freeform. Where will it be available?
It will be available on the Caligo Mundi website.
Excellent. Which you will drop a link to or something. Mish, you recruiting? Do you want to do a pitch for Granadas?
So my warband at Soulcraft is the Los Granadas, which is I say like femme, but like comfortable with like being lumped in with being a femme strong warband, which is it's our motto is Spanish and it means fight like women, and it's just like an empowerment group to essentially when it was created, LARP in general, but Soulcraft especially being such a male and like mask dominated space, having this group that's like not all femmes who do LARP are 18-year-old healers, and some of them are, which is also fine. Like they can do that, but not to undermine femmes in combat. So it's very much all about that, and I love it. I'm going talking about it. Also, Danny, amazing duo, was one of the founders of that group. So I'm not gonna say this is my group. It was actually Danny's and a few of our other friends' group, and then I joined in later. But it's all Spanish Renaissance inspired, and we're all just really hot and we kick butt.
That's delightful. What's next for you? Fantastic. So Elle is going to give us a bunch of links when they've got stuff that they're running. They're going to tell us all.
When I have that.
When you have it. Gareth pointed out next year's dates. We're announcing the pilot season dates. Okay. I didn't know we were announcing that. That's awesome. The dates for pilot season next year are the 12th to 14th June and the 10th to 12th of July. They're both weekend games. I don't know which one of those is your courtly game that you're stoked about. But they're both awesome, and they're both like new and exciting and really fun. I think they'll be really fun. I'm sure that there will be problems here and there, but I think the actual games will be good. Exciting. Okay, so block that in your calendar. I have a question I want to talk about, because we've got like 2 Lades in the head of the Gallant Order here, and also the most important person in the LARP hosting the panel. Thank you, sorry. I don't actually think that. I just like to play that game. So authority and ruling characters, right? So this is a game where people signed up, they bought tickets, and they came along, and there was another player in charge of their faction. Often that was, for a lot of people, that was not somebody that they had a choice in. For some people it was. no one except the people writing the game got a choice in who the Wodens were, or who the witch in the woods was, or who the high priestesses were of Io. But their characters put themselves under the authority of these players. And to a greater or lesser extent, depending on the player and all of that. And how I want you guys to talk a bit about how you think that affected your play, knowing that people were doing this, and how you think it affected the play of the people coming in, going, I'm coming in and I'm under somebody else's authority. Because, I mean, for me, I came in, like, Aunt Niamh didn't. Like, she didn't really recognize anyone else's authority. But you guys all did, right? In one way or another. And so I think that it would be really useful to have you guys talk to us about that.
Yeah, so do you want to go first? All right. So Conrad almost was just a humble fisherman who was not involved in politics at all. And then there was a moment at Workshop 2 when Vord had come together, and we're going around. It's like, how long have you been LARPing? It's my first time. All right. How long have you been LARPing? It's my first time. How long have you been? And I quickly realized, this is now me as Will being the person who has the most experience LARPing, which was not something I had been used to. I had COVID threw a wrench into a lot of work, so I had been out of the scene for a period of 2.5 years for certain reasons. But there was a moment like, I kind of have to step up and actually be the in-character leader here, otherwise no one will. And we were told that's fine. If no one steps up, that's a plot point. We can run with that. The previous Lade did just get assassinated anyway. But I leaned in and said, no, I'll give it a go and try it out. And I think that, best decision I made of the LARP. Had a blast playing that particular character. But I really think having a player character as a leadership figure can create really powerful moments and really good in-character and out-of-character structures to a faction. It also shows that the GMs are putting a lot of trust into their player base to have the players self-appoint a leadership person, a point of contact, someone who is helping, herd cats and get LARPers all in one place to start discussing what they're going to do. I think it really added a lot to the event. And I think if the Lades and the Kelders were all NPCs, it would have been a detriment. I know in other games there have been NPC leaders for the first couple of games, and they slowly transitioned them out as the leadership have been assassinated or stepped down, and player characters have stood up. And we also
that was the After the Fall model, right? Where
that was the game I was mentioning.
Where they were like they cast their NPCs as the leaders and like deliberately killed them all.
Yeah, and I think that was that's one way of doing it. But I really liked the trust that the organizers took with saying, no, players, you've got a faction leader, they're them. It gave people hierarchy to play with, and that's another thing that you can do. And it also means that you don't get into the situation where you feel as if your faction is being guided by the GM team into ways that is incongruous with the will of the faction. Because if I, as Conrad, wanted to move forward into a completely different direction and say, actually, we're going to do this now, that went against everything the faction had believed, I'd lose my head because people would feel a lot more comfortable with getting rid of me. Whereas if it's like an NPC, there can be those kind of, is this the GM's trying to tell us something? What are we allowed to kill them? Is there God mode active on them and they can't actually die?
Yeah,
and then
that's the Dragon Fest model, right? Where they're godly dragons or whatever, and you can't hurt them. Yeah.
Yeah, agency, right? Like, players. I think, we played a lot with authority in Dance Ribbons, especially in Dance Ribbons 3. So it kind of has this twofold kind of effect where, for players who, especially for newer players where you're I'm not really sure what to do, having someone who's kind of can be that guide and can go hey, here's a thing to do, or here's what our faction's about, is really useful as a starting point for those players of how they want to play that. And then also on the other side of things, it gives people something to push back against, right? In a safe way. It gives you the ability to push back against authority, or play with that experience in a way, that feels safe, and, feels you have that courage to be able to do that. And I think that's, really, it provides a lot of different potential experiences for LARPers to go oh, well, actually, I don't want to listen to this authority figure, and that provides its own kind of narrative, to go oh, actually, I'm going to go against what this person says, or maybe your faction decides actually we're going to overthrow this guy because he's not acting in the best interest of our particular faction, and so that also has a lot of narrative potential there. So it's I think it's it's good to have players who have that ability to do that. If players are playing with that responsibly, because obviously you can have not necessarily good agents with that, but I think because the Dance Ribbons team has created the kind of culture and environment where we're, again, the generous offer, the generous play, where you're yes, I am going to be a person in position of power, but I'm going to use that to give you as a player something to do with that, whether that's you're going to push back against me, or whether that's you're oh, I'm going to be deferential. I had an experience in game 2. Game 2 and game 3, Emery, very different sort of experiences. But game 2, Emery was oh yeah, no, I trust these authority figures, and I'm deferential to them, and whatever. So that was interesting to play with that and be oh yes, my lord, and then kind of drinking in the tavern with all of the Lades at one point with Carolina and with Conrad and stuff, and they're you could just sit down and play, and I'm oh, I don't know, and then kind of drinking and having fun, and then Emery kind of forgetting themselves and making fun of Conrad for losing so much, and then Conrad just going, oi, I'm still a lady, and then having that oh no, it's an authority, oh no, I forgot. So that was a nice, kind of moment to get to play with that interaction between authority and deference and things like that. Yeah,
it was a great moment at Dance 3 in the tavern. Lades are getting drunk. Lijsbet says, Conrad, one of your subjects just called you a coward. Hold on, please, I've got to go. And I made an ass of myself, and I was I'll have your tongue for that, and threatened them, with the remember your place, and playing with that this is still a king. You're still in a feudal society that doesn't. It's proper medieval, was very fun because you can sort of go, yeah, that hot and cold of ha ha ha, yeah, I'm the king, watch yourself.
Yeah, it was so funny actually. Something similar that just reminded me, the second game, was that Lijsbet, we were all drinking in the tavern, whatever, and one of the things I really liked about, I didn't do the Silcone Tavern as much, just because of mostly convenience, was that the Lades, we'd all pretend we were drunker than what we'd actually had to drink. And really have it up. And I think Will, you started that from game 1, but I remember in game 2, Lijsbet recognized authority, but only recognized Carafina's authority, and sort of looked down on the other two Lades, and we were drinking, and I remember at one point Lijsbet, because it was Lijsbet, Conrad, Guillaume, and she scolded them for not being strict enough, and was You two are so pathetic. How are you letting your common folk rise up against you and like potentially like oust you? Like you should just have them arrested and like hanged for treason when you get back home. Like what are you doing? Like you are like no wonder like you've had these votes where you're so lucky to still be holding your ladeship by now. Like and like she just like went in and like told them off like little boys. It was so funny. And it was like Lizard, like it wouldn't have said anything like that to Carafina. Not only because like they're like in character were friends, but because she respected that authority, she just didn't respect their authority. And she's just, and especially because they were doing bad at it in her point of view, but also because she briefly gone to the Strauss re-election where there was going to be the mustache. I can't remember the name, but had the fraudulent Lade document, and like Lijsbet had shown up as a scholar to be like, okay, like what's going on with this Strauss Lade election? What's going on? And it was like, oh no, legally you can't be the Lade because like that's not how it works. And then just being like,
my
this
dad,
is silly. It's like this is all just so like you're all so silly. There's actually more important stuff going on. Like I think Dior was about to be put on trial, and they're like doing all this stuff, and I was like, yeah, I'm like, how did you let that happen? Like all this sort of stuff. But then, I guess when it came to being a character put in authority, then after that, I was like very self-conscious of it almost. Like at the start on the Friday, people were like bowing, like curtsying, and I was like, as Mish, I'm like, ah! And like I get it, right? Because it's like, oh, it's a Lade, like I'm gonna be like this. But then I just started saying like, you don't have to do that here. Like you could, like obviously back home in Gothenburg, like that is where like I rule. That's where I have the authority. But here on festival grounds, this is a religious time. We're all mostly equal here, and like, which is so contrast to what like Lijsbet probably actually felt.
No,
but
that's interesting.
For me,
though.
as like for Mish, and like I guess for the outer character experience to the other people, I didn't want them bowing to me every time, and I didn't want them to feel like they had to if they wanted to.
Because it made you feel less uncomfortable out of character, or because
I didn't want them to think I was actually in charge of them, I think.
Right.
Out of character, if that makes sense. Especially for people who I hadn't got to meet yet, who hadn't made it to like workshops or whatever. It was like, okay, like sure, like, you know, I'm your like country's leader, but you know, here technically we're all here as festival goers. You know, like mostly just because I didn't want them to think like they had to do what I told them to do or whatever, but they still obviously had to like the respective authority, and it's my job to maintain that authority in the way that I would be as a Lade, and I guess like perform as a Lade during the game. I had to almost, it's like my thing to prove to those people who might not have had a prior, you know, relationship with Lijsbet or were there at the High Rollers Ball when she got elected as well, which I wasn't even going to put myself forward. Danny did for me.
Yeah.
Danny nominated me.
I think
and then
that
it was
happened
a vote.
to quite
so
a
it was
few of the
also
leaders.
like so it was also like, I also had the comfort of like, I was, I guess, elected to the position from players.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't just a like, I'm the Lade now type thing. So, yeah.
I was going to point out, somebody in the chat, that Papa Leb is pointing out that Guillaume was constantly requesting people, Guillaume, I don't know, Guillaume, was constantly making people call him my Lade and bow and shit. And I think that because of the way his character was and the way Straussland was, he didn't have to worry that people would think that he was trying to put themselves there out of character, right? Not my Lade. I shan't be doing that, my friend. But
it was so perfect for the Straussland game.
It was so perfect for the Straussland game.
He was making that villain. I think it was very clear because it was so cartoony.
Yeah, but also, like he didn't have to feel like he was putting himself there out of character. because of the way that the different positions. Sorry, Will, you were going to say something. Go.
I gotta say, power is so cool. I can see how it corrupts people incredibly. There was a moment where
So
I'm like,
much fun.
Sunday night, I'm the king, I'm having a good time, and I go, I'm going to make an announcement. We're all going to sing now, and that's my decision. And then everyone started singing. It's like, I sat back down, I was like, that was really cool. 10 minutes later, I'm doing that again. And got everyone in the tavern to sing again. I'm like, I
Yeah,
can't.
you
do it
got
the
so
third time.
drunk with that power to just stand up and start making proclamations. Like,
It was great. Oh,
you sat
highly
down, you're like,
recommend.
oh, that was the coolest thing.
But see, then on the other end of the scale, I had such fun, like with Game 3 Emery, just being like, fuck all this. Like, just like, I don't recognize any of your authority. Like, you know, not Conrad. Like, I'm constantly like, I'm like, yeah, Conrad's telling me to do things, but I'm not really taking him seriously. Like, you know, I don't give a shit about the Inquisition. Like, the first night on the Friday, because like, when I came into the game, I'm like, oh, like, you know, maybe Emery's going to be kind of like a bit more, you know, like a bit careful. Maybe, you know, is trying to like play things kind of close to the vest. And then that first like night on the Friday where the Inquisition came up and we're like, hey, like we want to get your name. And then I just had this like moment of like, nah, not doing that. And then like was just like, nah, I forgot actually. And they're like, you forgot your name. I'm like, yeah, I've had a lot to drink actually. Sorry. And then they're like, oh, I see you have like a weapon. I'm like, yeah, well, Conrad like let me have it. So if you got a problem, you got to talk to him. And then just like left and let him like have that as a problem. And it was like just a great time to be the person going, I actually think that, you know, this is all just actually nonsense.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can see why this is so fun for the Vicarians, like against
so fun,
Garmontians, being
though.
like, nah, fuck those guys.
Right?
Such a beautiful moment when the Inquisitors are right out front of the Amorian Tavern. I see you and I go like, shh, shh, don't. And then I see the glint that gets into your eyes and you just continue strutting out. It's like, oh, are you looking for me? And it causes 3 deaths, a manhunt, everyone's out for you. It's like, oh, such a good moment. Really
Truly continually creating problems for like Conrad. And my favorite moment was like the with Conrad, which was because it was something that we kind of like talked about a bit before the game, where I was like, man, it'd kind of be like funny if Emery ended up like getting like elected like first Kelder of like Straussland, because that'd be like hilarious. Because like they like if they got elected, then immediately went, okay, I'm dissolving the power. And then, you know, Will was like, you know, if you do that, Conrad's gonna have to like invade. And I was like, Will, you've spent 5 years letting me build up a paramilitary force in your borders. How well do you think that's going to go for you? And then
going to
we
be a
got
bloody
kind of,
civil
like,
war. A lot of
and
death.
then we got to have that kind of conversation actually in game at the end, when he's like, he kind of like called me up and he's like, look, so like, what would you give to like have all of the like peasants freed, like all of the serfs? And I'm like, you've got a bunch of money there, what do you want from me? And he's like, oh, this is only enough to like free like one of the cantons, but there's still like 2 others. So like, and I'm like, what do you want? And he's like, oh, I want you to like dissolve the Gallant Order. And I was like, I'm not the leader, right? Like, I can't dissolve the order. And he's like, oh, well, like, who is the leader? Because, you know, you've got this like very like Garmontian like mindset of like, someone has to be the leader. I'm like, there isn't a leader. That's the point. And he's just like head in hands. And he's like, you know, I gave you permission to exist. Like, I can like revoke that. And I was like, Conrad, like, I feel like the genie's out of the bottle with that. Like, there are so many like Gallant Order people now. I don't think you can actually enforce that. And he's just like, all right, go away. Like, and it was fun to be able to have that engagement of like, oh, you have miscalculated here.
Yeah.
And
also just,
You go, Mish.
I was gonna say, Lijsbet as like almost the devil on Conrad's shoulder during that. It's like, it's fine, like we can just like round them all up and like execute them or like just ban them. Like she was just like so like
we could just
my leash, like blah, 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 blah. But also when we were like, oh, we're scared Guillem's gonna die, what's going to happen to Straussland? And it was like, Conrad's like, it can't be the Duke of Straussland. It can't be Emery, because
Can't be Emery,
then they're going to
absolutely
become a Kelder or whatever. And I was like, absolutely not. And then it was all this stuff, and then me finding, I guess, the most, I guess, like, not killable person who's just like the perfect, not puppet, but like someone who's bold in their own way, but very easily like malleable, but also nice enough that Straussland will be like, but Jeanette's kind of like, she hasn't done anything, like, apart from being involved with the peasant sacrifice to the blood magic. We don't talk about that, but she hasn't done anything that bad.
Apart from sacrificing a peasant to
we can't, like,
the devil, to Turbo Satan, and summoning said Turbo Satan.
Yeah. That was to help with the famine, I think, at the High Rollers Ball.
but so here's the funny story with you, like, electing Jeanette, right? Because, like, I talked to her afterwards. She's like, yeah, I feel like Jeanette doesn't want it and is going to, like, abdicate pretty quickly and just give it to Dior because she's, like, sane now, I guess. And I'm like... So,
is she?
Here's the fun thing with
She's
Dior,
not.
though. Like, if Dior ends up becoming, like, the Lade after... is that the
She's not
uncursing
sane.
ritual that was done for her basically gave Kuramor's name to Dior, which is basically like being in the way of the Kelder of the She, right? So I'm like,
No.
you will kind of end up with a Kelder at the end of this, no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get a.
Which it was so
you
fine,
get a
though, because
Woden
it was
instead
like...
of a Kelder. Like, the Strathland Woden. That sounds amazing. Sorry,
But it was
Nick.
so funny, though, how I just, like, as soon as Shahar was dead, I just, like, I was like, oh, that's sad. Like, Guillaume deserved a bit better than that. Also, this Duke of Straussland, who I dobbed in telling Guillaume that he committed blatant treason, was right there when it happened. And then I was like, well, you were there. And then the Duke was like, no, I wasn't. I was at the tea house. And I was like, okay, sus. And then I just go to Conrad and I was like, you're just going to tell Straussland that they're too bereaved to vote and that you're going to name Jeanette as the latest Straussland. And then Conrad was like, right, yep. And just went and did it. And then Straussland were like, fuck Conrad, like, he can't do this, blah, blah, blah. And I was just there, like...
Legally, absolutely couldn't do that.
And it was just all
overstepped my
my
bounds.
plan. He was,
It was
the voice.
it was so good.
And it's just abusing his authority to get my way.
on leadership and assassinations, an incredible moment of, like, we're sitting here like, we need to get rid of the other Lade. Oh, Guillaume's a problem. And we're heading back to the tavern, and I'm with my court physician, and then we hear Manicus, and we're like, whatever. It's just probably just a peasant. And then we hear Manicus for the Lade. It's like, whoa, right, gotta get going. Then there's a moment where I turn and go, only if it's Lijsbet, though. And seeing her eyes go, ooh, and then we turn and see the dying body of Guillaume there. I'm like, oh, well, that solves that problem.
Yeah, we were like, look, Guillaume's a problem. We just need to either control him or, like, let the consequences play out. I was like, oh, Guillaume, like, you got to write a will, all this sort of stuff. I was trying to suss out, like, who, like, he would name as successor, because I was, like, as Lijsbet, super concerned about the succession of the Ladeship in Straussland, because I was worried that they were going to go full Vicarian, or that, like, there was just going to be, or, like, Frankie were going to come in and take full control or whatever, or, whatever sort of situation that could potentially happen. And I was like, what they need now is just, like, a Lade, and a Lade that I can sort of manipulate and control and influence. And it was fine. It was so funny, though, with Jeanette and Olivia, who played Jeanette, because
Yeah.
I was like, how do you feel about? I was like, so I see you there, like, helping out GM, whatever, and I'm, starting this, like, women in leadership program. And like brought her around to it, and Olivia was such a good sport because she's like, look, out of character, like I'm up for anything, like whatever, but like Jeanette's pretty hesitant. And then I was like, oh, you'll just get a heap of money. And then Jeanette's like, I'm in. And she did. She stole so much money. She got so much money. It's so funny.
True Straussland behavior right there.
It is.
The other thing that was funny with that whole situation with Straussland, because we had this whole conversation of like, we're gonna like turn into a like Keldership or whatever, and we kind of ended up with the compromise of the council. And before this point, like Conrad had like come up to me and other people being like, no elections, there won't be any bloody elections. And so then like when we like on the Monday when we were like, okay, we're gonna do the council thing, and we had like 10 Strausslanders left or whatever, because a whole bunch of them had died because of Denkin nonsense. And then so it was like whoever kind of wanted a position, it was like, okay, you have it now. And so then like later I got to tell Conrad, it's like, okay, we have a council now, but we did follow your decree, which is not to have elections. People just took the position. So technically, we did follow your order.
That no elections thing actually came from what Lijsbet said to him 5 years ago, drunken in the tavern. It's like, I can't believe you let the people vote? What's next? Democracy? How barbaric. So at the start of Dance 3, it's like, right, if I die, that guy over there, my steward, is going to be the Lade in waiting, and then we're going to do the proper election back home when we're not on festival grounds. And then I went around saying, right, none of you get the peasants any ideas.
You were going to make Gale the new Lade?
Yeah. We had it all planned out. I was going to give it to my I hope, not plotting to stab me in the back, vizier, one of many. And
Gale could read. He was one of the few that could.
We can.
We had to
That's true.
train the new Lade how to read real quick.
Yeah, Lijsbet taught Jeanette how to read in the tavern.
I love that. I'm like, let's talk about some art and some LARP theory. And we have gotten the most seriously nation-ruining tea on the play. Like, Elle's just like dreaming of napalm up here. There's guillotines being constructed in Strauss for Gothenburg nobles right now.
What's the most Gothenburg play?
That is incredibly.
Do all of that stuff and not have any of it come back on me at all.
Fantastic. Okay. A few things. We do need to shut down soon. Do you wanna do that again, Will? Just for a little bit. Oh my God, that is not readable.
The abolition of serfdom document that I just realized is right here.
I love that. Cat. There's a cat. Look at that. Please follow our channel. We're gonna put more stuff in. We're gonna talk more about LARP and art and making games and doing those things. There you go. Be like Helicopter. Follow us. Be like Daniel and Jan and Ken Yo-Yo-Yo, who I don't know who that is, and Papa Lab and Lexical Error, who was on this channel last week and still wasn't following us. Lex, what is the deal? And WeJ, lovely. And me, Ned Queen, and Danny, and Will, who only followed us today, and Gareth, fantastic. And Tang, you don't need to be sorry, Lex, you're a delight. You're currently our featured clip and will be forever. We will at some point. Thank you, Artemis. Artemis is 2 weeks ahead of Lex. Just follow it now.
I'm not following.
Mish is like.
just come through, did it? Oh. I thought,
I'm not going to have anybody on here who wasn't following ever again.
I followed like ages ago. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Speaking
no,
of-
it was just a lag. I don't know.
Well,
Speaking of LARP design and all that, I did actually just want to touch on Ioism and how it sort of evolved.
yeah.
Because the faith, like, I really leaned into having a 3-arc structure on faith and its nature to humans. And I don't know if Elle or Lijsbet had this, but Conrad started off as being a non-believer in Io and ended up as a zealot, basically.
Yeah, and went through heresy on the way, right?
Yeah. It was a whole thing. And the whole idea of the closing of the gate was this really powerful moment because all of the Iowites were pretty on board with our God has told us to shut the door and we're saying goodbye to her. But it's not the end because we had faith that she would still be with us even though she, all magic was going, all of her miracles were going. Io could not be with us. We had pretty...
It's very clear, right?
But we all believed nah, she'll manage. She'll find a way.
She's built different.
Exactly. And it was taking that faith of Io was this goddess who isn't present in much of our lives beyond the rituals we do to venerate her.
Yeah.
Whereas the she are
We're
with
very
you. They are
present
of
and-
the land. They're present.
Yeah.
So
It's a very
the
different
Garmontians-
relationship, right?
Exactly. The Garmontians got used to having this rather distant relationship with their goddess. We had, written down everything, and Mish, I think you put it perfectly when it's she has taught us how she wants us to live. Now it's time for us to go do that. And it was fascinating to see how the different factions looked at the closing of the gate. I'm going to toss to one of the other Garmontians here to see what they think.
Yeah.
You go, Mish.
I was to say, it was amazing though, on the Sunday before the gate closed. So we'd had that ceremony early Sunday morning where I'd done that speech about letting go and leaving home for the first time. It's going to be sad. We're all devastated. And I was close to tears in that moment, even just thinking about, giving this up with how devoted me as Mish had been to being a staunch Iowite as well, and actually having to say goodbye to that faith. And then later in the day, it was the Vicarians are doing another summoning of another she to try and find out how they can still stay connected and whatever. And Lijsbet was just why can't they just accept it? It was so crazy because everyone in the sort of the Iowite circles had sort of just gone this is what she wants for us, and it hurts, but we just have that full faith. And then I was who's the more devout? I was they're saying they're so devout, but they won't even listen to him. Side eye, because Lijsbet at the end of the day is a cow. She's just a big bitch.
You're not wrong though about that.
but
That's a strong
sort of
point.
how
I
it
think you're right
was.
though, right?
We all just accept, and we were all devastated. At the last ceremony, when we were sort of walking around and singing, even before all the stuff with the shepherdess happened, I genuinely started just weeping a little because I was saying goodbye to, I was actually saying goodbye to Io because I'd put so much work into being, I guess, being connected to that part of the story and that aspect of the game, and actually saying bye to it was starting to get me really emotional. And also looking at LARP dads, Josiah and Dave, because they were standing right near me, so I'd come around the circle and I'd
Dressed
get a
as
glimpse of
she.
them, and saying that goodbye, but then also then seeing the shepherdess. And then I remember Scout came up to me later that night, and I was like, Scout, did you give me solid eye contact, or was I just imagining we were doing the stage look out at the audience? And Scout was like, no, I looked at Will in the eyes, I looked at Elle in the eyes, and I looked at you in the eyes, and then that broke me. Looking at the three of you and how far you came broke Scout as Eleanor. And I was like, oh my god.
So it's funny, on this panel you've got the 3 Garmontians who are probably also amongst the most devout Iowites, who also were the 3 that Eleanor looked at that final moment.
Well
it's
done,
really
August.
interesting.
Good casting.
It was really interesting for me as like an atheist playing like a very like devout character. And I say, like, I joke that like I've, sped run ex-Catholicism, right? But like, because the gods were real in this world, like I couldn't be like, oh well, I don't believe they exist, because we literally saw them.
It's ridiculous.
So it's more just like dispensing of like the structural elements of it. But it was really interesting playing that and then having that like feeling that I'm like, oh, this is what people feel when they have faith, and like, because in this world,
That's incredible.
Yeah, like, because I feel like so much of like real world religion is like there's a lot of like hang-ups in regards to like the treatment of like gay people and the treatment of people of like different religions, and like there's a lot of like issues, right? Like I have my own like religious trauma and whatever, but like being able to like play with faith in a world where you kind of it's like Josiah and Dave made it very clear, like we're not playing with like things of like sexism and homophobia as well.
Yeah.
So getting to like engage in like that feeling of faith in like a safe way, in a way that you're like, oh, I can like that sense of like connection to others, and in this like kind of magical spiritual way. Like I'd never had that, and it was just a really like powerful like moment. Like I had a moment with Brother Galen where, because we were, I was like, my character's like devastated that it was like, yes, this is like necessary, but like I'm gonna like lose that connection to Io, and like I know like we have faith that she'll still be there, but it's not quite the same. And like so we had that kind of like moment together where we're like comforting each other, and I was like, really, it felt so powerful in that moment of like we're both crying over this like figure that we know is not like real in the real world, but like in that LARP, like in that moment you're like really like grieving over it and feeling like that sense of like community and connection.
But also not actually real in the LARP, right? Like I mean, I know that we had an NPC dressed up as Io and like Io walking around embodied, but for the vast majority of the actual connection that you guys made, you were making it to a concept, not to a character. Mish, then Will.
Yeah. So just to go back on like that, the faith thing, like I was so connected to it, and like when I was a kid I went to church or whatever, but like it was crazy like how different it was at the same time. Like it was just so like it was its own thing as well, because it like we built this at the same time as well. Like I guess especially from game 2 I was like really pushing for it, really invested in both the Inquisition and the Shepherdesses, and being a loud, I guess, advocate for Iowite, and even like when I was helping out with Will and stuff, being like, yeah, like going hard Io, it's the way to go, like all that sort of stuff. And feeling like, actually saying goodbye to this thing that we helped even build to the scale that it did end up being at, and being so immensely proud of what the Church of Io became, and saying goodbye to that was also really hard. But when I was doing my speech at the morning service on the Sunday about how we have to let go, and like how it's time for us to leave home and like go try and build our own lives, but we're still gonna keep doing like church, we're still going to keep worshipping Io, because like Io created humanity, so we'll always be connected to her. And it's like I created all of humanity, by the way, Lord Dump, even you Vicarians. But when I had the moment of walking away from this speech, and I had a witness come up to me and like sort of touch my shoulder, and like they sort of did almost like a meditation with me, which is like you feel a warmth surround you, you feel your shoulders relax, you feel your like neck like release, you feel the knots in your stomach start to come undone, like you feel like your hands like fall sort of like to your sides, and you feel a sense of pride being conveyed to you, and you feel this warmth, and you feel this love, and you feel an embrace. You feel a mother's embrace. That was pretty much the way that this interaction went with this witness, whispering in my ear right after I've like in this heightened emotions of like one just standing up in front of a whole heap of people and doing like this big speech about like letting go of this thing that like I hold really dear, and then having this moment, like I literally, like they walked off, and then Will turned to me and was like, "Do you need a hug?" And I was like, "Yeah." And it just like was like I just finished putting my makeup on, and then I climbed up this stupid hill, and then I was like, I'm trying so hard not to cry because it was just so beautiful, and it was like magic, like it was like a spiritual experience. And as I said, like I'd done this speech, and essentially the GMs like gave me like a well done, like that's what I wanted you to say type thing, but also just from Lijsbet, like having this like her first like direct like influence and contact, I guess, with Io directly was mind-blowing, and it was the way that they did it as well, like moved me so dramatically. And like, yeah, it was practically spiritual because they sort of talked me through it. It was awesome. I wish everyone got that, but also it was very special as well.
So that's actually what I was about to say. Conrad never had a moment where he felt Io or was talked to by Io. At the High Ruler's Ball, I made a big song and dance about Conrad going and praying a bunch even when he didn't need to, and the witnesses reached out to people, but he never got a whisper in the ear. And then never got visited all throughout Dance 3, and it was this beautiful moment of alumnus had spoken to him. KU had spoken to him. She had just given him trauma. But Io had never. And not having that interaction with Io, not being reassured or comforted, and just having to have faith that she is looking out for him really made it feel like this is actually faith. It is not belief, it is faith. That he has to go on. Everyone else says that they've seen Io, but he has no empirical proof of it. He just has what he knows to be true or what he believes to be true, and has to lean into that. And yeah, there was a moment where I'm like, and this organized religion stuff kind of goes hard. Shame about all the horrors. And having that
makes
space
sense at that point, doesn't it?
Yeah, having that space where you could have an organized religion where you've got rituals, you've got community, you've got people you can speak to and know that you share a love in this one God was really powerful. And not having all that extra baggage about, okay, well, maybe the Church of Io was doing some dodgy stuff, but they were heretics. It wasn't as close to home, and a lot of, it felt different because it was abstracted and that fantastical element was there.
Can I just point out no, you go. No.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, I did get the whisper of the ear. So I got the one thing, but every time I was round, I somehow missed it. But I was just going to like share one last anecdote from like the when we were talking about the shepherdess, like all the feels, like the moment when she like looked at me. So because we were all doing the triangle, the previous day, shepherdess Eleanor had given Emery her necklace with the triangle on it, to basically say like, I need you to safeguard this. You need to be the one to like make sure that if something happens to me, that like the work that I'm doing like continues on, that like, you know, that continues. And I was like, nothing's gonna happen to you. No, absolutely not. I'm not gonna let it happen, because like Emery just like idolized her so much. And then like at that final dance where like Emery was kind of like standing nearby, is like, because there was the whole thing like where she's like, you got to stop Garmontians going through a gate, and I was like, I don't know, like I'll be here, but I don't know how I feel about that. And then she went through the gate like accidentally because like she'd been like holding on to Faye Killer, and I grabbed onto her, but she went through the gate, and I kind of like sort of went through the gate, and I was like trying to pull her back through, and she's like, Emery, like, you need to go, like you have to like go. And I was like, no, I gotta like save you. And she's like, you gotta go. And so I like left, and then so I'm just like watching Eleanor like holding up like the necklace, like watching her basically like being like, yes, I've got, like, I'm gonna like continue, like I'm gonna make sure that like the legacy continues, and like just bawling, and she's bawling, like they're, you know, and we're
so
like, we're both
magic.
crying.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was like a really like powerful moment, but like that was like, oh man, like everyone's like, whoa, we're like celebrating. I'm like, I'm so sad.
Yeah, I was like trying to like big man through it because my friends were sitting on the bench, so they didn't all see what happened. And I was like, yeah, no, it's just like a really beautiful ceremony. Yeah, it's and I don't know why Eleanor would do, but and I was just like fully doing that, and my friends thought I was putting it on. But that was genuinely me trying not to bawl my eyes out in front of everyone.
I think I cried
so
for
much
like a
at these
good half an
games.
hour, like proper bawling, like I'm like, I have not cried that hard in years.
It's actually really good, right? So it's like
cathartic.
extremely cathartic. I was going to make some cracks about the. No, I'm not going to, but we did see the Church of Io do torture and violence, like in front of us, right? But I don't think. But we also saw the faithful do wonderful things, whether or not, like, and I'm not talking about the miracles or whatever. That's sort of kind of irrelevant. We saw people do wonderful things because, in the name of this belief. And when you're like talking about the power of organized religion, the joys that you can get out of it, I'm like, is that not what we're getting out of LARP? Like, we turn up with a bunch of like-minded people from a bunch of different places. We share ritual together. We share song together. We eat and drink together. We share community. We find magic here. We find connection to something bigger than ourselves. And we give a bunch of money to people who then spend it on having babies. And I feel like that's very much the organized religion experience. Or at least, like...
I'm out of big hats.
Right? And big hats. There's big hats. There's costumes. There's incense. Pageantry.
Singing.
Yeah, right? So much singing. And singing where they don't care if you're a bit bad at singing, which I think was my favourite thing about church, and always was.
Yeah.
Right?
It's interesting, like, as well with, you know, you getting into that mindset, and you start, like, assigning, like, meaning to things that you wouldn't have necessarily before, like, feeling the magic of the experience. Right. So, like, having it being really sunny on, like, Sunday, and then, like, just pouring on Monday, and something
just when, like, the heavens just opened after the gate closed.
And so some people were like, oh, well, that's like Io, like, crying now. But then, like, Emery being both, like, a follower of Bran and, like, Io was, like...
No, we had the Bran's blessing thing.
Yeah, Bran's blessing. And it was like, oh, like, because then you had all the marriages on the Monday. So it was like, oh, like, so you're, like, in your head, you're like, oh, it's kind of, like, over, but at the same time, and, like, the gates closed, but at the same time, you're like, oh, this still feels like a sign in a way. It's still, like, we still have that, you know, feeling of, like, oh, this is meaningful. We're assigning meaning to it.
What's funny about that as well is that even without the, like, Bran side of stuff, is that as someone just looking at it from the Io perspective, is it was like, yeah, she's weeping, but it's to wipe the slate clean, like all the horrors that have happened on the ground. And what happens after rain is new growth. Like, this is what inspires it. Like, we're the sprouts that are just under the soil right now, and after this rain, like, that's when we'll get our time in the sun, all type thing as well. So, like,
that's great.
all this stuff, it was pretty beautiful.
I think my favorite one was the mother was hugging us so tightly, which is why it was warm for those last couple of days. And then when she left, you could feel her absence.
Amazing. Okay, I tried to end this 18 minutes ago now, but that was actually really valuable. I'm super glad we kept going, because that was good TV. The Interactive Arts, Immersive Arts Melbourne will be continuing to run these streams. We don't know what the next one's going to be about. It's probably going to be talking about some sort of arcane specifics and things. But we will be talking about artful play, and we will be talking about LARP. And the cats. Oh, it's a good cat. The important things... we will have a tip jar going up. Currently it's not there yet, but it'll exist if people want to give us money that we can spend on LARP. We will also be running Immersive Arts Melbourne memberships, where we'll have extra content and stuff at some point in the future, but we really are just making it up as we go along. I want to thanks, Lex. I want to thank everybody who has been and played. I want to thank Gareth and Taryn were in the chat doing moderation tonight. Yeah. There was a really good... Gareth, can you put the we've got an announcement email that Immersive Arts Melbourne will send people if they go and type some stuff into our website. Hopefully Gareth or Taryn will drop that in the chat shortly. Is there anything that you guys would like to talk about? Not talk about, we do not have time. Is there anything that you would like to quickly pitch or give a little couple of sentences on before we go? Mish?
Yeah, I'm not the only one who does LARP sewing commissions. Danny, the beloved Dior, is also open for commissions. She put it in the chat before. I don't want to hog that, but if you have the ability to, commission some kit, because there's some cool makers out there, and use the community for that.
Amazing. Yeah, commission your friends. Well,
come to my how to write a freeform Q&A. I say I'm just going to be the one asking questions to the smarter people in the room. If you ever have wanted to know how to write a one-shot parlor LARP, freeform, theatre LARP, whatever you want to call them, come to that. It's a really good way to get your your toe into writing games, because if you can write a game that goes for 3 hours and that was good, then you can write a game that goes for 6 hours, and you can write a game that goes for a day or 2 days.
Yeah, and you can run a game that goes for 3 hours with like 1 or 2 people, which is much easier to do than a weekender.
And if you don't want to write a lot, but you do want to find people who have ideas and may need a team, Caligo Mundy's got an idea incubator, and I'm sure Immersive Arts Melbourne will also be doing some wrangling of people.
Jump in the Caligo one. That's real good. Ellie?
I don't have anything particular to try and promote. I mean, if you want weird prop stuff, let me know. I can make. I'm building a giant puppet at the moment. I'll let you guys know when it's done. Apart from that, just watch this space. I'm sure I'll be throwing myself into the sort of ST side of things soon enough. So
fantastic. Thank you, Steve, for following us. Thank you, everybody else, for following. And thank you for coming and watching. Love you all. You're all delightful and magical. And then I put this thing up. And then I press some buttons.